Please be seated. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 28th meeting of City Council. I want to thank members of the audience and those who are delegations for your patience in changing the meeting from last night to tonight. I hope you understand the urgent matter of business yesterday, so thank you so very much for your patience. Councilor Bryce.
Thank you. I'll move the agenda with a tabling of the delegation 17-29 and report CR 17-24 to the April 10th meeting. Thank you.
And that would be the reassessment tax policy discussion. Thank you very much. A seconder, please. Councilor Bresciani. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll move right into our agenda to delegations and notice of public hearings and bylaws and related reports. We have, the minutes, yes, minutes from the February 27th. Councilor O'Donnell, seconder. Okay. Councilor Murray, any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Bresciani.
Your Worship, I do have to excuse myself due to a conflict of interest, as a family member has a hold on some property in the towns.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll wait till you depart, then we'll go into our delegations. Thanks. So our first report or delegation is on the proposed Towns Concept Plan revisions. First delegation is Jason Carlston. Mr. Carlston, if you come forward and identify who's with you and who you represent, you have 5 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards.
Hello, Your Worship. I'm Jason Carlston, VP with Dream Development.
I'm Evan Hunchuk, General Manager for Land Development in Regina. First, we would like to thank your administration for the work they've done on this file, with particular thanks to Jeremy Fenton and Ian Cantello for quarterbacking the review process for a successful conclusion here tonight. The report in front of you today is comprehensive and provides a thorough overview of the proposed amendment to the current concept plan. In developing this plan, we undertook a very inclusive process, which included an urban design workshop with participation of a number of city staff and planning and operational business units. Given the comprehensiveness of the administration's report, we would like to highlight 2 key reasons for the amendment and note a couple central features within the plan area. The first reason for the amendment is the need to reconsider the amount of commercial land. After the concept plan was approved, the city approved an amendment to the Greens on Gardner concept plan, which effectively doubled the amount of commercial zone land from 10 to 21 acres. This significant increase in the amount of commercial land in the Greens has meant there will be less demand in the near future and midterm for commercial development within the neighborhood hub. A portion of these areas subject to the amendment in front of you tonight includes what is termed the neighborhood hub in the Southeast Neighborhood Plan. The neighborhood hub by policy is expected to accommodate a community-scale grocery store and combination of high-density residential and other commercial uses. Because of the scale of the development in Acre 21 to the south in the Greens on Gardner, we have adjusted our expectation on commercial space, and we are anticipating more residential and mixed use, which this plan accommodates. We will still be striving to realize the policy aim of a grocer and a mixed-use development, just to a lesser degree than originally contemplated. To this end, however, we would strongly caution the administration and council against supporting any further increase in commercial land designation outside of this neighborhood hub area within Eastbrook, or the towns. Should any additional lands be permitted as commercial land designation, the commercial element of the neighborhood hub may no longer be viable. Second reason for the amendment is the need for broader diversity of housing types. Given our current market intelligence indicating that apartment condos have the largest proportionate available supply in the market, and our ongoing discussions with the building community regarding housing demand, it was clear that we needed more diversity for housing types within this area. This amendment provides a broader range of housing forms than was previously approved and includes single detached, semi-detached townhomes, apartments, and mixed-use residential buildings. This is accomplished while still meeting the density targets within the official community plan. The two key features within this amendment are, one, the circulation and parking. Whereas noted in the report, we have added a number of lanes to the plan area, which will benefit on-street parking availability. In addition, it is worthy to note that all the streets have been sized to accommodate parking on both sides, and as developer, we are requiring all builders to build a parking pad or garage in the rear alley so as to free up more on-street parking by providing off-street parking for these residents. The second key feature to this amendment is the central plaza space and mixed-use site. Through the relocation of the park space to the mixed-use parcel, we are paying close attention to the park and the site design so that we can better integrate the plaza with the adjacent residential and commercial uses. We view the plaza as a signature space within the area, and we feel it's better served through its close proximity to the mixed-use development, and you should have a few images there to demonstrate, or for illustration of what the development intentions would be.
You have 1 minute to go.
Thank you. In sum, as the administration's report notes, we have met the goals and objectives of the official community plan, and the amendment is also in full conformity with the Southeast Neighborhood Plan. We concur with the recommendations before you, and we are prepared to provide any further information or address any questions. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. You're just on time. Any questions of the delegation? Councillor Donald.
Thanks. Good evening, gentlemen. So we've thrown out a couple of new words. Let's descript the words. I've heard the towns and I've heard Eastbrook. Could you differentiate for me, please?
Through your worship, the town's concept plan area is the full neighborhood, which encompasses sort of the city-owned lands, which is the west of the Dream-owned lands, and Eastbrook is what Dream has termed our development within the towns.
So give me a comparison to the rest of the city. Is this like Lakeview? Is this like Whitmore Park? Is this, would that be the same terminology?
It would be, and Eastbrook would be adjacent to the towns.
Okay, good. Thanks very much. Let's start with the plaza and kind of maybe work out from there. What's your intention in the plaza? So as a resident of this area, why would I want to come to the plaza?
So the plaza is envisioned to be more of a hardscaped park, that it would be 50% hardscape, similar to Victoria Square downtown. And it would be a central hub where you would have space for gathering, whether it's farmers markets or different types of festivals. Adjacent or around the perimeter of the plaza, there would be mixed-use buildings with main floor retail and what we've contemplate 3 stories of residential above that. So it's meant to be a bit of a gathering space and also an attraction for the community where you can host different events within the community.
Thanks for that. Would you consider this a neighborhood gathering place or a city gathering place?
Through your worship, probably a regional gathering place. So within the Southeast Neighborhood Plan area, which goes to the north and to the south, includes Greens on Gardner and future neighborhoods to the north. This is centrally located within the neighborhood hub. So it'd be very much a regional, but of course, all parks or open spaces are open to everyone within the city.
Right. Thanks very much. Could you talk a little bit about walkability for your plan here?
I guess if you were to refer to Appendix B, that shows the existing town's concept plan, and Appendix C, which shows the proposed amendments. The 6 park spaces within the 300 or so acres within the plan area have been distributed so that they're all within a walkable 5-minute distance from wherever a resident may live in that area.
Thanks for that. Is the notion of back alleys promote walking? Because you've added back alleys. So does that make it easier for me to navigate through my neighborhood over to the hub?
Through your worship, yes, it would. As you can see from the concept plan amendments, the land use is primarily on a grid form, where one would anticipate that would be fairly walkable, given that there aren't cul-de-sacs and crescents and it's short block lengths, whether you use an alley or a street in order to cross the street.
Good, thanks for that. Point of emphasis is that on on the street. There will be parking on both sides, and that is assisted by the fact that each, I won't call it single-family home, but every home will have a parking pattern behind. If you would just clarify that for me, please.
Through your worship, through past learnings in other neighborhoods such as Harbor Landing, we've found that parking has been a concern in the past, so we've tried to mitigate that in the newer neighborhoods here like Eastbrook, where every local street is constructed to a collector cross-section that allows for parking on both sides of the street. Further to that, most of the blocks there within the plan area also have a lane, so they have additional parking in the rear. That would only apply to semi-detached townhomes or different type of attached products. There are some single-family lane products that would have parking in the rear, but there would be an amount of front-attached single-family homes that don't have a lane.
Gotcha. Thanks. I'm good.
Thank you, Councilor O'Donnell. Councilor Flagel.
Thanks, gentlemen, and welcome back. After planning a couple of weeks ago, I asked the question of you guys, but I'll give you the answer to what one of my colleagues on the Planning Commission said. I asked about condominiums that were not apartment style and were not townhouse apartments, two-story condos, but bungalows. And I said, we don't have enough of them in the city, and I'm asking, is there going to be some in here? The member, who's not here tonight, but one of our planning members, said, that's exactly why I'm living in an apartment condo, because I couldn't buy a bungalow condo because I didn't want to move from a house into an apartment. I wanted to go from a house to a condo, but I couldn't go into a two-story. Are we going to see some single-family condos in this neighborhood?
Through your worship, we do have just under 20 acres of multifamily land which could accommodate that form of housing type if there was demand.
Okay.
We haven't actually allocated any of that land to any builder yet within the city. We have had some preliminary discussions for that product type, but as of right now, there isn't any firm plans for that.
If I could, thank you, through you, is as the developer, can you drive the market to go to that kind of thing? Because we know there's a demand. I've seen it across the whole city. North Regina doesn't have many bungalow condos. Harbor Landing has very few bungalow condos. There's only a few little pockets in Windsor Park that are bungalow condos, and they're never for sale because they're gone, right? So can you, as the developer, put stipulations on land? I'm not saying force them, but I'm asking, is that a possibility?
Through your worship, we have been working with one particular builder, and they're working on costing right now, because one of the issues that they've encountered, and other builders who have looked at this model, is how it competes with other similar forms.
Right.
And if it's at a higher cost, it's a challenge. So
Sure.
we're still trying to confirm whether, we've heard the same thing from certain individuals in terms of that being a demand.
Yeah.
But a lot of the builders just aren't able to hit the price point to compete with fee simple.
Right.
So we're working with one builder in particular to try to look at particular density.
That's all I ask. Thank you. You're saying, okay, first of all, sorry, you're saying the next 20, there's another 20 acres. In this particular parcel, are we talking about how many condos or any condos at all that you've earmarked?
Well, so when I made reference to just under 20 acres, that's the sum of 5 different parcels within the amendment area here.
Yeah.
They could all allow for that form of density, providing that we still hit the high-density target as it's contemplated within the zoning for the next piece tonight.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flagel. Councilor Stevens.
Through you, Your Worship, thanks a lot, guys. I was wondering if perhaps you could walk me through a very simple definition of the high, medium, and low-density units. Give me a snapshot of what each one of these would be considered.
Through your worship, so just looking at housing form, examples of housing form, low density would be single detached dwelling, could be skinny lots, could be thin with alley access, or it could be front attached, so that would be conventional low density. Medium density would range from semi-detached to townhomes, typically maybe fourplexes, And then high density would typically be apartment style or some variation of apartment style, stacked townhomes or eightplexes or something in that form. So those would be the general representation.
Thank you. So while the change here, the proposed change, doesn't really change the overall density very much. It goes down from 58.9 to 56.3 people per hectare. The high-density units are really cut in half, or at least with the proposal. Could you talk a little bit about how this might impact affordability? I know the OCP speaks a great deal to mixed affordability in new areas. Is this going to change who can afford to live in this space?
Through your worship, we would anticipate that, I mean, there's been some other changes to increase density on the towns, on the city's lands. There's been some amendments that way. And down the line, we would likely look at phases 3 and 4, which don't have much representation on higher density, potentially bringing forward amendment there. So this really is more about matching the pace of development with the demands in the market.
Okay. So it's feasible down the road you could have a proposal come forward that would actually increase the number of high-density units?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what we're seeing in the marketplace today, the trend over the next few years, through our analysis, has been that the attached product are becoming the more sought-after product. So a lot of people are moving from single-family home, not moving from, but aren't able to get into single-family homes, but their first home is more of an attached product.
Okay. I will press this question again, the affordability. What would we think of as the average cost per unit of a high-density unit versus low-density? Who's buying these places? How much are they typically paying?
I'll talk about fortunately.
Through your worship, I guess that's it all depends on what the unit's comprised of and the finishings that you would see within the unit, as well as what the value of land is to establish what that final price would be for the end consumer. But there are quite a few medium density unit products like townhomes and garden suites and things like that that are in the borderline between medium density and high density, that are in that they would be in that $250,000 to $350,000 per unit price point. If you're buying an apartment, these are general guesses, but the apartments would be maybe in the $225,000 to $275,000 range, whereas single family, you're starting to be closer to $350,000 or more likely $400,000 and above.
Judging from that commentary then, is it fair to say that this area is now less affordable based on the proposed change?
Through your worship, I wouldn't say that necessarily. To my previous point, those some of the medium density parcels that we've allocated in this area, they would actually have a very comparable price point to a high density unit. Again, back to I guess our previous comments is that there is the amount of high-density land available in the market exceeds what the demand will require for the next 5 years or so. So this amendment is to allow for faster absorption within the plan area versus holding high-density land vacant for another 5 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other questions? Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. We'll now look at CR 17-21, which is a proposed towns concept plan revisions. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. Can I introduce this? Please ask for a seconder. I'll speak to it.
Second, Councillor Young.
Good. So I'm going to start with an amendment, if you don't mind, and I think we're going to bring it up on the screen here. And I would ask, if you don't mind, for the administration to explain this, and then I'll pick up from there.
Okay. Ms. Harlech.
Through you, Your Worship, when the Southeast Neighbourhood Plan was approved last year, it was an error that we attached the concept plan to the neighbourhood plan. Our past practice has been that neighbourhood plans get approved and those are attached to the official community plan as an appendix. But concept plans through the Planning and Development Act can be approved by resolution of council, and that they don't have to go through a ministerial approval process like a neighbourhood plan does. So because of that error, what we're asking for council to do tonight is to replace recommendation 1 from the report, and what the recommendation that you see on the board on the screens would do is remove it from the official community plan, from the town's concept, or town's neighborhood plan, or pardon me, the Southeast Neighborhood Plan. And then subsequently, we would be asking you to approve the concept plan by resolution. And as I said, the reason why we do that is so that we're more nimble with the concept plans to being able to adjust them as needed. But they always have to be in conformity with the larger neighborhood plan.
Okay, so the amendment's now on the floor, and Councillor Young, you seconded that. No, actually, you just, you go ahead. Okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment. Are we all clear the purpose and the intent of the amendment? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor O'Donnell.
So I'll refer now just to the motion as amended, and I just want to highlight a couple of things. One, there was learnings, and part of the learnings is that there will be different parking circumstances in this area. In other words, the ability to park on both sides of a street as well as the pads in the back. I think you heard that. I think you also heard clearly that with the addition of some alleys, and by the way, in the last 10 years, the notion of alley has been common here, whereas I would tell you the previous 20 years, the notion of an alley was not common. So this is not a new change, but it probably takes us back to neighborhoods that many of us grew up in before. Second thing I want to point out is just some of the stats that are in the report. The population as existing, if we don't make any change, would project to be about 7,633, where now it's being projected about 7,193. Not much of a change, but some change. Density remains well within the range that we have set in the OCP for 58.9 to 56.3, and then you'll see the number of units and so on that are there. The Planning Commission had absolutely no issue with this. We thought that this was a typical type of change that we make as it evolves in the marketplace. We would seek concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Speakers to the report. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We are now on to Delegation 17-26. Mr. Carlson again. Again, for the record, Mr. Carlson, identify yourself, who you represent, and you have the 5 minutes as usual for commentary.
Great, thank you, Worship. Jason Carlston, Dream Development, with Evan Hunchak, also of Dream Development. So we didn't have a formal presentation for this. This report in front of you just has all of the zoning designations required to execute upon the previous report and the changes in the plan.
Okay. Are there questions on the delegation? Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. I just want to make some clarity, if you don't mind, gentlemen. So is there anything in here that we didn't talk about previously? In other words, with the hub, the shopping area, the type of housing, and so on. Is there anything different in here?
Your Worship, no, there isn't. It's just the zoning attached to those.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Thank you very much. There's no other questions. You can return to the gallery. And we'll look at 17-22. This is the zoning amendment application for Eastbrook Phase 2. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. I'll introduce this. Ask for a seconder.
Seconder. Councillor Massanelli.
Thanks very much. So you notice the word Eastbrook. Eastbrook is now part of this. We had talked before about the two words, and there was the towns, which is a large area. Now we're talking about Eastbrook. All of the things that we had said before, as identified by the administrator or by the proponent, is clearly in here. It's just now making the designation in the areas. We have it before us. Again, we saw no problem here. Seek concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other speakers to the report? Other comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll now move to the two bylaws related to these reports. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Councillor Fendura, the bylaws number 2017-12 and 2017-13 be introduced and read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor Fendura, that bylaws number 2017-12 and 2017-13 be read a second time.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council has completed its consideration of these reports and is now dealing with the following bylaws. 217-12 respecting proposed amendments to accommodate the replacement of high-density residential blocks with low density and to adjust the design of two new proposed parks, and 217-13 respecting the proposed rezoning to allow for multiple lots for various types of residential and commercial development. If there's anyone in the gallery who wishes to address council on either of these proposed bylaws, I would ask that you indicate your interest at this time. We appear to have one person
We have one.
interested. Your worship?
Okay. If you could identify yourself, who you represent. Do you have 5 minutes for your comments, and there will be questions of members of council afterwards?
Thank you. I apologize for my voice tonight. Battling probably what everybody else is battling here tonight. So first of all, my name is Chad Novak. And I'm here on behalf of the Saskatchewan Taxpayers Advocacy Group. I honestly am in shock and awe because I am here to support this proposal. I'll tell you why. And I know that probably shocks everybody here. I'll tell you why, though. Because of the fact that I love the layout of it. Drew was gracious enough to attend the Ward 4 community information session. I loved, I can't wait till it gets developed. The one thing I have concerns about, and it has nothing to do with them, is the fact that what they brought up tonight, this is new information, and I wish that this would have been something that would have been talked about last April, when you approved Acre 21. You rammed it through. Not all of you. This is why I delegated that evening. Because of what's happened here. Now these guys have to go back to the drawing board, come back to you and say, you know what, there's not enough demand for commercial development in an area because we're giving it to another developer. Personally, I don't want that commercial development in my backyard. I'm not a NIMBY person. I simply moved there because I don't want that in my yard. If I wanted it, I would have moved to Harbor Landing. I didn't want it there. I still don't. I know it's probably too late to change it, and I wish to God it was, or it was still able to be changed, but unfortunately I don't think it is. I love what Eastbrook has to offer in terms of the community aspect of it, the walkability, the backyards, the wide streets. Please take note for all future developments, please. The backyards. I could go on forever. When Councillor Stevens mentioned about affordability, now this is something that I know is going to be sensitive here, and I will try and tread lightly. The City of Regina has probably the most unique opportunity here in its history. You own a significant portion of this development. Towns south, towns north. City of Regina, a.k.a. taxpayers, own that land. You, through administration, can set the land price at whatever you choose, whether it be 10% profit, 30% profit, or 200% profit. I'll let administration decide because that's what they're experts in. But being from someone, I'm sure many of you are probably very aware of my background. Having worked for a housing developer in this city, I know all too well what the reality of the numbers are. Land is the one place where you can directly impact affordability in this city. I know it's not going to be favorable by the developers. I know. Maybe not. Maybe they'll actually be in support of it. And I know it's probably not something you can have control over tonight, but I would ask that the motion be put forward down the road. That when it comes time to sell those lots to whoever you choose to, if it's directly to residents or through developers or whatever, that you set a maximum profit margin. And what this does, it shows that you're willing to take a hit, theoretically, because if we give you 100% profit versus 10% profit, it's going back to us anyways. It tells the developers that they are no longer in control of City Hall. It tells them that we truly believe in bringing affordability to the city. We truly believe in impacting where we put our money where our mouths are. That's what I'm asking of you tonight.
You have 1 minute, Mr. Novak.
Thank you, sir. So I urge and I beg of you, I don't know if it's possible to do through an amendment. If it is, great. If not, I notice a motion down the road by any councillor. I would like to see a proposal made to limit the profit margin of 10%, if that is reasonable, for any lot price in the towns. This will effectively force developers to bring their overall costs down. And anybody that wants to know more about that, please, they know where to get a hold of me. I welcome the questions, and I welcome any questions that you might have for me tonight.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Other questions of the delegation? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Return to the gallery. Since there's no other speakers on these bylaws, I'll call vote on second reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Stevens.
I move, seconded by Councillor Murray, that Council hereby consents bylaws number 2017-12 and 2017-13 going to third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
I move, seconded by Councillor Bryce, that bylaws number 2017-12 and 2017-13 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we'll move on now to delegation and related reports, and I'll have Councillor Bresciani come back in. It's good. So delegation and related reports. Our first delegation is D 17-27. Chad Novak. Mr. Novak, for the record, if you could identify yourself, you'll have 5 minutes for your presentation, and then maybe questions afterwards.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, my name is Chad Novak, and everybody knows who I am. I'm here to address the elephant in the room, no, the city. The projected $21 million cost overrun for the food and beverage service at the new stadium, which I like to refer to as Mosaic 2.0. Now, within this report, there are some concerning statements which I'm hoping can be clarified for the residents of Regina this evening, who have entrusted our elected officials with the biggest infrastructure project in Regina's history, even if it wasn't really an essential item. Roads, sidewalks, water mains would have been better served by this kind of money, but that's neither here nor there anymore, since the new stadium is slated to open this summer. What is most concerning to me, though, is this statement from the report, and I quote, "In 2014, the food and beverage project was removed from the scope of the $278.2 million stadium construction project." Now, I'm really curious here as to exactly who made that call. Who decided to effectively add an open-ended cost item at that time, which we now know is at least $21 million, on a project that was continually promised over and over again to come in on time and on budget? Was this something that went through City Council, or was it negotiated by the former Chief Operating Officer, who was entrusted with such negotiations at the bequest of the Regina City Council through their vote to delegate that authority? Based on the report before you this evening, in Appendix A, it appears that this was actually a decision put forward by the bidders, even though they ought to have known that they were required to come in on time and on budget, as had been publicly suggested. If they didn't think that the $278.2 million price tag would cover that cost, or better yet, the entrusted individual representative of the City of Regina should have come right out to the public and said it at that time. Not wait a few years until where we're at right now of no return, and it's either done or the stadium isn't completed. Honestly, I really don't care how this story is spun by the City of Regina, because at the end of the day, taxpayers are now paying $21 million more for the stadium, which is entirely contrary to what many of you had run on in the 2012 civic election. Remember that one? You know, it was claimed to have been that it was the referendum on the stadium? Also in the report, there are claims that this is exactly what the Stadium Reserve Fund was designed for, to which I would argue that the very nature of a quote-unquote reserve is for unexpected costs, and not ones that were actually originally included within the $278 million price tag, and especially not one that is considered crucial to the stadium's operation. Now, let me be clear. This isn't a situation where it was decided halfway through construction that maybe we should add a few more washrooms or an escalator or two. No, this is an essential part of the project that was known to be required for the stadium's successful operation from day one. What you have effectively done here is tied our hands, and yours, when we have no choice but to say, well, it's essential to the operation, of course, do it. So it is my sincere hope that the entire $21 million, plus a hefty interest, will be fully recouped within a reasonable time frame. Now, of course, no one knows if this is ever going to be actually a reality because, as per the report, this is apparently still being negotiated. Oddly, though, as you'll notice in Appendix B, Everest Place had no problem with throwing out a RFQ, or request for quotations, for this exact project.
Mr. Novak, you have 1 minute.
Interestingly enough, it actually ended today, or yesterday, I guess now. I'll offer, I'll skip through the rest of it, I will offer that you ask REAL, Redundant Exhibition Association Limited, to fund this, because it's essentially what you're being asked for tonight, is to be a financier in this whole situation. Get them to do it. They have money in reserves, they have money projected for the next however many years, they have the financial ability to take out a loan if need be. This is their baby. This is what you told us. I'm only repeating those words. So I will thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I will gladly answer them.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions of the delegation? There are none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll return to the gallery, and we'll go to our next delegation, Carrie Stenson and Jamie Singer. Good evening and welcome to City Council. If you can identify yourself for the record, who you are and who you represent, you have 5 minutes for your presentation as well.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. My name is Carrie Stenson. I'm a president of the Saskatchewan Craft Brewers Association. With me is Jamie Singer, treasurer of the Saskatchewan Craft Brewers Association. We represent 13 craft breweries from across the province, including Regina, Saskatoon, Swift Current, and more. The local craft beer industry is growing rapidly and represents $30 million of economic activity per year. We employ hundreds of Saskatchewan workers and buy locally grown products like barley, wheat, lentils, fruit, and honey to make our beer. Our members win awards and receive global recognition for the high-quality beer we make, as well as for business excellence. Rebellion Brewing just launched a beer in Australia that received national media coverage there. Blackbridge Brewing recently won a provincial ABEX award, as well as several national brewing awards. A recent article on Saskatchewan craft beer ran in major newspapers across the country, which compared our industry to the prestigious and world-renowned Okanagan wine industry. The secret is out. Saskatchewan is home to world-class craft beer. Less than 5 years ago, there were only a handful of local breweries. In that time, our membership has more than doubled. You can find our products at hundreds of locations across the province, including restaurants, pubs, and liquor retailers. We are an integral part of the Saskatchewan economy, and we serve a thirsty, passionate audience that loves a delicious, high-quality product. We are also becoming an important part of the provincial tourism industry. Many visitors to the province actively seek us out in their quest for products which are uniquely Saskatchewan. A web-based map will be launched this year, allowing users to locate the craft breweries located throughout the province and learn about our products and history. We are excited about the new stadium and the new opportunities it represents for local producers like us. Across Canada and the United States, progressive sports stadiums and entertainment facilities are responding to customer demand for greater selection of local craft beer. CenturyLink Field, home of Seattle Seahawks, offers over 30 local craft beers. The Kansas City Royals are launching an official team beer brewed by a local craft brewery to be served at Kauffman Stadium. BC Place in Vancouver proudly offers 3 craft beers produced in the immediate area. When a city has craft beer on tap in their stadium, everyone wins. Consumers get more choice, local producers get exposed to a wider audience, and profits are reinvested in the local economy. It just makes economic sense. Through discussions with city and stadium officials and our own research, we can set up self-sufficient booths offering a variety of local craft beer from our members. These booths would be extremely cost-effective to install and operate while still being functional and looking professional. We do not need to be a part of the massive beer system being installed for Molson Coors. The SCBA has had numerous discussions with city administrators and officials from Real over the last 2 years. Verbal assurances have been made repeatedly that local craft beer will be offered in the new stadium. This has also been stated on the official RRI Twitter account and has been stated multiple times during public speaking engagements by various city officials. However, to date, we have not received any assurances in writing, nor is there any mention of local craft beer in the document being reviewed today. Mayor and councillors, I have 2 questions for you today. First, will Saskatchewan producers be given the opportunity to offer their products in the new stadium? And second, does the estimated $20.5 million food and beverage project include consideration for Saskatchewan craft beer producers? Thank you for your time.
We'll get your answers to those questions, but if there are questions of the delegation. Councillor Flagel?
Thank you and welcome. Question regarding the amount of craft beer that was supposedly talked about maybe coming into the stadium. What kind of a percentage based on the rest of it being Molson?
That we are looking for.
Well, that you were possibly talked about. Was there a percentage of volume?
No, there was no percentage, actually. There was just talk that we would be in there, and there was assurances that given that we would be for sure, and that was the discussions we had.
But no talk of volume as 5%, 10%?
No. If anything, we Your Worship, we actually have requested the details of any contracts that might be outstanding and in place currently now. We've received no details to this point to address that and help develop a plan for us to be in the new stadium.
Okay. Through you, if I could, let's say 5% was allotted to you. I don't know what I'm just going to use a number. How would you determine that among the 13 Saskatchewan craft brewers? How would you do that? Maybe that would help our administration, because they don't want to have fights going in amongst another organization. But
and that there is a formula for that, and we've discussed this at this SCBA board member level already. There is some of our breweries that are members of us that could right now obviously supply that amount. That amount and have maybe a tap or however it would be set up there now. There's others that, they're fairly small, they're in their infancy, that may not be able to, supply right now. But we are also discussing the fact of, whether it's a lottery basis or you take turns.
Right.
Again, it's offering that variety, and that's what we bring to the table. So, the going thing here is that, and it's not a fad. It's a growing phenomenon across North America. People want that diversity, and that's that's the nice part about what we could do for that.
So let me ask you a question on the plus side. Let's say you got 25% of potential volume out of that stadium for a football game, as an example. Could you fill that order? Is there a number that you could only work your way up to? Is 10% of volume, or what would be the magic number for you guys to be able to fill for a day?
That would depend on the sales quotas, the past sales data.
Sure.
We would have to look at that.
Okay.
But again, I know, speaking for my own self, Rebellion Brewing Company and Blackbridge, Kerry right here, we could. It's not a problem of supplying it. Okay. It's not of any amount of volume for that matter. But
that's good to know as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Bresciani?
Thank you to you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. Just a couple questions. So you indicated that it wouldn't be a lot of cost to set up where you would be. Can you elaborate on that, Jamie?
Oh, definitely. No, it's, there's a lot of different options that we have that we've thought about that is on the table at the SCBA board level, from a very little cost, and again, being very self-sufficient, which we are. We've run different events, beer festivals. We've attended them before in the past, many of them, in which we are self-sufficient. We bring our own equipment, our own tables, things like that, which, really what we need is some cooling storage space and some ice. at the bare bones level. We can make it very, very much more professional. I think we've attached a couple of examples of what is seen in other ballparks around North America. That it can be, and we still want to make it look that way, of course. But at the same time, we are very self-sufficient, and the cost could be very, very minimal from our side. So.
Perfect. And through you, Your Worship, is there any other stadiums in Canada that do this as well? Do you know?
Well,
Right now?
I guess Vancouver is the one that we stated. And really that, I think, would open up, it would just create really a lot of interest for Saskatchewan and Regina if that was offered across the world, really.
Yeah, the Steam Whistle was actually in the Rogers Centre at one point, too, in Toronto. We know of Central City Brewery and Distillers from Surrey that are currently producing beer for BC Place as well. So again, an independent brewery and distiller that's doing that. That's just as an example. So.
Great. No, that's great. It's nice to support our own. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brashani. Councillor Donald?
Thanks. Nice to have you here. I think you brought some friends with you as well. That's nice.
We did,
Good for you.
yes.
Thanks for that. Full confession. I either had a misspent youth or didn't have a good youth. I've never had a beer in my life. So I need to understand a couple of things. Craft beer to me means small operation. Is that part of this? Or is a craft, would you compete with, Anheuser-Busch or somebody like that someday, or what?
We wish.
We compete with them now, is the short of that. But under our bylaws currently right now, to be a member, we produce less than 20,000 hectoliters per year. So that would rule out, obviously, some larger multinational breweries in Saskatchewan, should they be there. When you mention craft beer, though, there's some very large breweries that exist across North America, very large breweries. I can mention some: Stone, Sierra Nevada, Rogue, if anybody's ever heard of that before. They're a massive breweries, but they still produce what we think about in the craft essence of beer. It's quality. It's quality, using quality ingredients, not adjuncts like rice, corn, things like that, which are just meant to boost alcohol and not add any flavor. That's what we're after, and that's what we're about when you see craft beer.
So taste matters. This
Yes.
is about taste. So I'll give you a different example. So I think there's been a lot of Tim Hortons grown, and what happens at Tim Hortons is it becomes a place for people to gather, whether you like coffee or not, but it's a cheaper place for people to have friendship. I tend to see that craft beer is produced in smaller settings or for smaller gatherings. Is that part of this, where you have a smaller crowd to appreciate? It's a social setting?
I think it's a smaller crowd in Saskatchewan right now, but it's a growing crowd, and it's a huge, the numbers are there. It's obviously started in the States, and it's only come to Canada, in more recent times, although, BC and Ontario's craft beer market right now is $300 and $600 million respectively that they add to the local economy, which is quite huge, obviously. Saskatchewan is playing some catch-up in that regard, but we're getting there, and we're seeing it more and more.
Do I assume that when you make your craft beer, that you are always using local products? Is that a standard? Is that a requirement? Is that an understanding, or is that?
We wish we could.
Yes, and we're actually working on that. A lot of our raw ingredients do come from Saskatchewan.
Okay.
I can tell you, our honey, our fruit, all as much malt as we can get our hands on. That it's a growing industry, and right now we're finding, and we're working with some malt producers actually to make it all Saskatchewan. We produce a lentil beer using locally produced lentils here as a pulse crop. So just other examples of what we can do and what the market is leaning towards.
Thanks for helping me understand.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Councillor Murray?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I'm really happy you guys are here. I have a lot of breweries in my ward at the Warehouse District, so I've seen a number of them, and I think one of my question is anecdotally I'd heard from some of your brewers that are part of your group that there was only about 3 kegs. They had heard something like this. only 3 kegs available in the stadium per game. Is that what you had heard?
We've heard a lot of things. And that's the reason why we're here tonight, really. One of the main reasons is because you hear rumors, and we've heard lots of them, but it's good to start nailing down some of these details. And frankly, we're very excited about this aspect, about putting world-class beer in the world-class stadium. So we want to start sifting that out, and knowing that, time is not so much on our side anymore. I think we're approximately, 3 months away from the first game. We want to get on this, and we're very enthusiastic and would love to have the opportunity, so.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a growing industry, and I think we need to keep it local, so thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. There are no other questions. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. And before we go to the report, I would like to have some comments from the administration on 17-23. Mr. Holden?
Your Worship, I'm going to ask Kim Onright, the executive sponsor for the RRI and the stadium project, to provide comment.
Mr. Onright.
Thank you. Your Worship, members of City Council, the first 3 items on the report in front of you tonight are housekeeping items, so I'm not going to talk about the detail in those. They're very straightforward. I am going to talk about item number 4, which is administration is asking City Council to approve the withdrawal of up to $9 million from the stadium reserve to complete the food and beverage project. There was a decision made in 2014 to remove food and beverage from the base building project of the $278.2 million. The city's consultants at that time and the successful bidders felt at that time there would be more value for money by removing and keeping that part of the project separate and outside the base building. To date, there's been $11.4 million invested, $6.9 million from Rio, which is for the actual kitchen equipment, the point of sale software and controllers. There's been $4 million as a part of the 278.2, which is for the base building work that needed to be done to allow for this part of the project to actually happen. So an example of that would be beer conduit run through the cement work while the base building was being done, and some of the design work that had to be done at the time of base building to provide for the food and beverage work to be done at the end of the project. The remaining $9 million for the project, there's been question about that money coming out of the reserve. One thing to understand is that money is being replenished back into the reserve. So it's not a complete draw on the reserve. The money over time is being put back into the reserve. Those discussions and negotiations are currently in place and ongoing with Real as we work through the operating and maintenance agreement with them. And the terms of the agreement will be forthcoming, and a follow-up report will come back to this council on the funding model for the stadium. There have been a few questions that came out of public exec committee a week ago, and I think we heard some of the delegations bring those forward today. There are ongoing discussions regarding craft brewers in the stadium. There are ongoing discussions between the riders and Real. Also understanding that there is a contract between the riders and Molson Canada on the pouring rights in the stadium, which Molson Canada has. There will be discussions forthcoming with Real and vendors, including craft brewers, on the detail of that and what that will actually look like. But they currently aren't at that point. Even though there is only 3 months to the first game, These discussions are continuing, and the city does follow up to ensure they are continuing and moving forward as required. There's also been some questions around community groups being involved in the new stadium. So understanding that the model for the new stadium is different, the business model is different than the old stadium. Real, who has community groups involved in some of the current businesses, will be in conversation with community groups to see what opportunities there might be in the new stadium. And they aren't currently at that point. They are working on their operating model and how that will work in the new stadium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onright. I'll turn it over now to Councillor Stevens to introduce the report as from the Executive Committee. Councillor Stevens.
I move that the report, Regina Revitalization Initiative Project, seek concurrence on the report.
Seek concurrence on the report. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Barshani. Speakers to the report. Councillor Barshani.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I have a couple questions for administration. We heard from delegations tonight. So I just want to, it's accurate that, is it accurate that there is about 60 million in reserves? Is that accurate?
Mr. Onright.
It's real, yeah.
Through Your Worship, that is not accurate. I believe the delegation was referring to real,
Yes.
to their reserves, and I'm not sure about that.
Okay. So I guess the other question I have is in regards to the contract that we talked about. So if we're looking at, we say it might be a loan, $9 million, the plan, is there a plan, and we said it's kind of been worked on, but is it something that you can give us an idea that in this 30 years, there's going to be, every year, we're going to see something back? Like, is there anything, again, I'll just share that from a council's point of view, it's very hard to commit. It's like when someone goes to the bank and you're saying, I want a loan, they're going to not say, well, okay, I'll give you the money, and then you come back to me and we'll work it out how you're going to pay me back. So if you can just clarify that for me.
Mr. Onright.
Through Your Worship, yes, the details are being worked out. However, I can say that the $9 million will be repaid. There will be an annual payment, and we're just working out the terms and length of term for those payments. But it will be paid annually.
Okay. Through Your Worship, so that will be coming, would that be coming back to council at some time for I don't know if it's information, so we know exactly that's happening?
Mr. Onright.
Through Your Worship, that is correct.
Thank you. With one of the other questions, as far as the communication between the community groups as well as the craft beers. So I guess the question I have is what is taking so long? Because I know I've heard from community groups and I've heard from craft beer organizations. So the question is, we're 3 months out, the window's getting smaller and smaller, and these groups are for sure wanting to know what's happening. So can you just I know Real's not here tonight, but if you can just give us an idea of what do you think is taking so long, and what's the next step for these organizations?
Mr. Onright.
Through Your Worship, so the first part may be related to the craft brewers. That is in direct relationship to the food and beverage service that's going to be provided. And the conversations to date have been around the Molson contract and Real providing that service. We aren't directly involved in those discussions, as Real is going to be the provider of the service, and they are the operator for the stadium on behalf of the City of Regina. The community organizations, because the business model is different, and the difference between the two, in Old Mosaic Stadium, you have a single source provider for food and beverage, in the new stadium, you will have multiple vendors in the new stadium. So Real is working through the operating part of that for food and beverage, and that is taking time. It is ongoing, and until food and beverage, until we got to this point, they were not able to have those discussions because they needed to gather information from the food and beverage project, get some costing models, work their costing models forward to know what they can and cannot do.
So, Your Worship, so have they secured the contracts then for the food, for the vendors that are going in there then? Has that been secured? Do you know?
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, I believe some of those have been secured, but those are ongoing discussions also.
Okay, so just a comment that I would hope that this is a community complex. The money has been raised by the community, that we seek some working with the craft beer and the community organizations, and we make it known to Real that that's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brasciani. Councilor Flagel.
Thank you, and just a couple of questions. Currently, or last year, did Taylor Field concessions sell craft beer?
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, no, they did not.
They did not. So I guess my comment would be that Real has some work to do to be able to cut into 100% of Molson's profit to go to the local craft beer people to give up 5%, 10% of the volume. So is there any way that the city would entertain getting involved in this discussion with Real and the riders?
It's a bit premature when they're still negotiating, I would think.
Yeah.
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, we would not, because the agreement for the pouring rights is between the Rough Riders and Molson Canada.
Okay.
The discussions between Real and the Rough Riders are how will they be able to get the Saskatchewan breweries into the stadium and provide their products to the event goers.
Okay. Okay. So if the city was to get involved, they would have to go past Real and get to the riders and Molson's, if that was even a possibility. So, and that's a different contract. I was going to ask a question about the reserve, the money being paid back. And I got the answer of that, but I didn't get who is going to pay the money back to the city.
Mr. Onright?
Of the $9 million.
Through Your Worship, the repayment will come through Real, and it will come from the food and beverage revenue.
Okay, that makes sense. That's what I kind of was hoping you'd say. I just think that I think we have an opportunity and to bring the craft beers in, because it's becoming a lot more popular. I'm not a beer drinker myself either, Councillor O'Donnell, but I do support the idea of local brewing, local ownership. I don't disagree with the Molsons or the Labatts or the Kokanees or the Great Westerns at all for wanting to take on the biggest piece of the pie. But I think there's a share factor that might help us, and if we can ever get to a point where administration can get involved, or somebody, Real, with Mark Allen and his staff, hopefully we can come up with some solution for these the local brewers, because it comes back to grassroots, and it's one of those things that it's nice to have. And people like to have a couple of choices when it comes to brewing and drinking beer, as I know I've seen a lot of people drinking lots of different stuff, and holy cow.
Thank you, Councilor Flagel. Councilor Massanelli.
Through you. I just wanted to clear up, why in the first place do they believe there would be a greater return on investment by sectioning this portion out of the stadium itself? What was the pertinence behind that? There's been a little bit of allusion to nefarious means. Is there any validity to that?
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, those early discussions were before my time, but I do know the unknown was what food and beverage would actually look like in the final stages. So I believe, and when we look back, if it was a single source supplier, today, we would have paid more money on a shorter return of an investment because a single-source supplier would have put a markup on whatever products they were putting into the stadium and the services they were providing. So that was, I believe, the rationale behind it.
And just a comment as well, what little weight I have, I'd like to put behind the Craft Beer Association too. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Other questions? Councillor, you'll be closing debate, so I'll let you stay last. Councillor Findera?
Thank you, Your Worship. To you, the discussion was, and the comments were made that the contract is between the riders and Molson. So my question to administration, or I'm wondering about, if it's between riders and the Molson and the CFL, 9 games, what happens, where do we fit in this mix as a community stadium, as a community facility? Does the Molson then have the rights and riders have the rights to just pour Molson or have a bigger cut in that, or how does that look?
Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, just to maybe understand the question, is it the Molsons and the riders have the exclusive rights for only the 9 games?
Right.
The riders, the agreement the city has with the riders is the riders have sponsorship for the stadium. So Molson's, depending on the events, will have their agreement in place. Maybe at a concert or major event, Molson's are still involved with their agreement with the riders.
Okay, so then, thank you for that. So the comment will be, then that means we really have to be strong now, because it looks like, seems like Molson's going to flow, and the community groups or some of the smaller brewers are going to have to pick up the small pace. So I would say that we have to protect some of that. I'm not sure what we can do, but I think we can do something. Negotiations are still going. I would kind of look at that a little bit deeper. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Findera. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Councillor Stevens is going to be closing debate here, but this is just a comment, is that this is a community-based stadium. It was built by the community. I think we need to ensure that we have community organizations represented in it and community-based businesses. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Other speakers before Mr. Holden?
Through Your Worship, I just wanted to add some additional comments. So I think Mr. Onright's done a good job of explaining the details of some of the negotiation and some of the outstanding issues related to the contracts. But I just want to remind Council, but also the gallery, that REAL is a municipal corporation of the City of Regina. So as such, they understand the role and responsibility that they have to ensure that there is community participation in the stadium. So they're the ones that are doing the negotiations, and yes, some of it is through the riders and Molson's and the riders and REAL, but Evraz does understand the importance of involving community organizations where possible in some of the food and beverage services, and they also have a very clear understanding, and the riders as a partner as well, that they're looking to involve the craft beer industry at the stadium. So although we're not in the direct negotiation, as Mr. Onright has indicated, we definitely have some influence, and we'll continue to remind our partners of the importance of what's been discussed here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. If there's no other speakers, I'd like to take Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't understand this very well. The riders got from the city sponsorship rights, which permitted them to give Molson pouring rights in the stadium. Is that right?
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, that is correct.
And how does Riel fit in then, if this is really a deal between the riders and Molson's, with Molson's having already captured pouring rights in the stadium?
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, REAL is the provider of the food and beverage service, so the discussions between the riders and REAL are to figure out how to have the craft brewers into the stadium, whether it be for football games or other major events, to supply their products. So the details of those discussions, I don't know at this point in time. However, we are involved, as Mr. Holden has indicated, with our partners, and they do understand the importance of having local community groups and businesses involved. I may just add, the food and beverage service that will be provided is different in the new stadium. It will have local vendors supplying food services and beverage services in the new stadium. So that was part of the model that was set up.
Okay, right now I'm interested in beer, though.
Okay.
And am I correct that the riders have given Molson, or sold or contracted with Molson's to give Molson's the exclusive pouring rights for beer in the stadium? Is that right?
Mr. Onright.
Through your worship, that is correct.
So in order for the craft brewers to get in there, somebody's going to have to persuade Molson to back off and make some room for the craft brewers. Is that right?
Mr. Onright.
Through your worship, that is correct. However, I believe there is a provision for craft brewers in the current Molson agreement, which is what is under discussion at this moment.
Thank you. It's clearer to me now. Your worship, I wish the craft brewers well. I'm a little concerned that Molson has a lock on this.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Other speakers? Councillor Dahl.
I'm a little loath to get involved in the discussion because it's in negotiations. I'm going to go back a little ways. And go back a little ways to before there was a stadium, that is a new stadium, we had an old stadium. And when there was contemplation for something new, I had the opportunity to go off to a facility to view it. I travel lots, I go to sporting events, walked my way into a couple of stadiums and had the goodness that a few people would come and listen to me. So one of the stadiums I viewed was a place where they had one sole source administrator and supplier of food and so on. They just signed a contract. There were no community groups working in that stadium. There was much money made by one company. And after a few years of doing that, by the way, they brought in the concerts, they brought in everything. They were relieved of their duties. That was openly discussed at one time on the floor of council and with what's going on. Two, we have a corporation, and we have an agreement with that corporation called Real, where we said, here, handle it. That's what we said. Within that organization, I think Mr. Holden did a good job. He said, there are community groups. Oh gosh, they use them all the time on a daily basis, whether it's a hockey game or anything else. We have the Riders, who are a community-based organization. When you walk in the old stadium, it was a volunteer that greeted you, took your ticket and everything else. They understand that concept. We've also said, turn a profit, turn some money back in here. I'm going to make a statement that will probably tick some people off. I get that. Because you did something 25 years ago and 10 years ago and 5 years ago, does that give you the right to continue on? What about a new community group that gets to come in? What about some other people who would like to, whether it's craft beer or anything else? How does that all work? Some folks have said, look, we've done it before, we want in again. Okay, I get that. Should that be for a period of time or should that be forever? Because I did it before. My point in all of this is we have turned some of this over and there's lots to be considered. Food and beverage is one. People in the door to volunteer, how this place is to run. And we still have test events to go to figure this out. I think the time is short, I get that. But I still want to let the people do their job.
Thank you, Councillor Dowell. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, just to clarify, there are negotiations in process which we need to keep our hands out of because it's not our job. It's Real's job to do. The second thing is that in that contract with the riders, there is a portion of that contract that says that craft beer needs to have a place in the stadium. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, that is correct.
Okay. I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but is it possible that the minutes of this meeting and the discussion that took place is shared with Real and the riders? Or not?
Mr. Onright?
Yes. That is.
We don't need a motion or anything for that, or do we? Okay, all right. So then we can expect that the conversations that took place in the chamber tonight will be shared with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Young. Councilor Stevens, can you take the chair, please?
Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I do want to add a couple of comments to what Councilor O'Donnell was saying. We go back in what we had requested in previous councils to have this a community stadium, and it is. There are room for community organizations to be there, community organizations to volunteer there, community organizations to be involved. There also is clearly an avenue for craft beer to be in this stadium. That is subject to negotiation, and I would concur we can't interfere with that negotiation. We've delegated this to Real to provide the food service, beverages, maintenance, and operations of the facility. I have mentioned, I know members of the administration have mentioned to the riders, the absolute requirement to have craft beer in the stadium. No question about that. That will happen. But this is a negotiation between organizations not directly tied to the City of Regina, delegated to Real with the riders. That will happen. We've heard this from the administration. It will happen. We could have had a different opportunity, but we didn't, related to the food services, as Mr. Onright mentioned. We could have had a sole source for food, as is in the current stadium, and that would have blocked out a lot of our great restaurants that we want to focus on and showcase in our stadium. They'll be there too. But we've also asked, as part of the discussion, that they turn a profit. They turn a profit back in, and that's important to us as well. It's a different business model than the current stadium. But the concepts of local involvement, local restaurants being involved, local breweries being involved, is clearly there. Am I right, Mr. Onright? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Onright?
Through the chair, that is correct.
So I think we'll wait, and hopefully we'll hear soon enough so that our local craft brewers can know the involvement, the amount, the timing, all those would be very, very important. So I want to turn very quickly to another issue, and this relates to the reserve. Just to be clear, the purpose of the reserve that we're using tonight of the $9 million to assist with respect to the food and beverage it's the very purpose of the reserve. It is for that function. Is that correct, Mr. Onright? Through you, Mr. Chair?
Through the chair, that is correct. The reserve is used for planned and unplanned financial needs.
So it's not an additional cost to the stadium. This is the food and beverage portion. The building itself, the actual stadium itself, $278.2 million is a contract that has been finished on time and budget. This is a separate function within the stadium. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stevens to close debate.
Great, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. I also want to support what my colleagues have said about the craft brewers, and I do also wish them well in their attempts to make their presence known in the stadium and to work this out with Real and Molson. I think it's long overdue. I think we really need to emphasize the importance of having local businesses in this important facility, and it looks like we're going to be turning a different page here in how this place is going to be run from what we've seen in the past. I guess I do have a couple of follow-up questions, and I just want to make sure that I'm hearing this correct. I understand that we have a reserve dedicated to this fund. That makes sense to me. That's part of the overall costing and financing of this new stadium. Excellent. I just want some confirmation about something here, that Riel cannot finance this themselves. Is that correct?
Mr. Onrait?
Through your worship, that is correct. Riel's commitment to date is $6.9 million. That is directly related to the kitchen equipment. So an example would be the commercial fridges, commercial stoves that go into those areas.
Great, thank you. And the final point I want to make sure I'm clear on here is that we are seeking today, or administration is seeking today, a $9 million line of credit. That's how it's been framed. But we don't have the actual repayment model rate and business plan in place for seeing the pace at which that $9 million is repaid into the reserve. Is that correct?
Mr. Onrait?
Through your worship, that is correct.
I just want to say this publicly. That makes me very apprehensive. I have absolute faith in the administration, those tasked with seeing the completion of the stadium. I'm very worried about approving a line of credit without seeing the terms under which this will be repaid. And I'm not sure in good conscience I can approve this type of expenditure without seeing those details. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. You have closed debates, so there's no further debate. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll move on to our next delegation. We have tabled the Finance Administration Report on reassessment, so we'll go to Judith Verasek. This relates to expansion of a building in Victoria Park, a maintenance building. We'll just wait for the crowd to clear, Mr. Rickman, then you can proceed. Okay. Ms. Verasek, if you could identify yourself for the record who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and Council may have questions for you afterwards.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Fougere and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you in support of CPS 17-3, expansion of the Victoria Park Maintenance Building. My name is Judith Verasek, and I'm the Executive Director of the Regina Downtown Business Improvement District. On behalf of the RDBID Board of Directors, I'm here to support the recommendation before you today. Regina Downtown is a strong supporter of City Square. Since 2011, RDBID has offered a number of programs that support positive activation of the park, plaza, and FW Hill Mall. Participation numbers of our programming have steadily increased since 2011. One example is Cinema Under the Stars, which went from 4,000 people attending 5 outdoor movies to 9,000 people attending this evening event, which typically runs until midnight. Our other programs include the Summer Concert Series, Salsa on the Plaza, Words in the Park, chess, yoga, art in the park, the Victoria Park Skating Rink, and Exploration Days. We also partner with a number of groups and provide support to their events downtown, and these include Saskatchewan Highland Games, the Folk Festival, the Farmers Market, Market Under the Stars, Trifecta, Afrofest, the National Aboriginal Day, the Circle Project, and Queen City Pride. To support both our regular programming and third-party events, we have a variety of assets, including racks of folding chairs, tables, Adirondack chairs, A-frame signs, information kiosks, stanchions. We have over 100 pairs of skates that we loan out during the winter months. Garbage, recycling bins, brooms, shovels, other cleaning supplies, a sound system, tents, and flags and other signage. Additionally, we have grown our Clean and Safe program. Last year, we collected over 600 bags of garbage, 120 needles, and removed 773 graffiti tags. To support those cleaning efforts, we have purchased a sidewalk sweeper and plan on purchasing a utility vehicle and pressure washer to further enhance our services. To provide these services, we require an on-site secure storage solution. In the past, we have stored our assets in the Gordon Block, which is no longer an option due to safety concerns with the building. Currently, we use the Peterson trailer situated on the plaza and a storage container in Victoria Park. Our current storage solution is at capacity. And to grow our programs and clean and safe initiatives, the expansion of the maintenance building is essential. Expanding this will give us a permanent solution to our storage deficiencies. The plans before you today are a result of a collaboration between RDBID and the community services staff, in particular Janine Daradich. Together, we have identified a suitable location that minimizes the impact to the park, and we have incorporated a design that respects the historic nature of Victoria Park while accommodating our storage requirements. Recognizing that we are not the only stakeholders in Victoria Park, we have had discussions with the Regina Folk Festival and the Farmers Market to ensure the building footprint will not have a negative impact on either of their events. The estimated cost for this project is about $75,000, which RDBID is prepared to fully fund. With your approval, we hope to have this maintenance building constructed and in operation by the end of summer 2017. We look forward to continuing the partnership we have with the City of Regina in ensuring City Square, Victoria Park, and FW Hill Mall are vibrant, exciting, and safe places for the community to gather. The expansion of this maintenance building is essential to meeting these goals. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Verasuk, for your presentation. There are questions. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. Welcome, Judith.
Thank you.
Will this new building be added to the old building so that it will look like one building when you're finished?
Through your worship, correct. We actually will share the south wall with the existing maintenance building. So when you look at it, the intent is that for it to look as one building with two units.
What will the external materials look like?
It will match. So it will be stucco finish with, I believe, a metal roof, same gable.
Then will you be able to remove some of the other storage things that you're using now, the trailer and other things?
Yes, those were always to be temporary storage solutions. We worked through that with community services staff, and yes, the intent hopefully is to remove the Peterson trailer first and then the pups container shortly after that with the construction of the pavilion, which hopefully will occur next year.
So then this will look like it belongs in the plaza and that it's plus for the plaza as opposed to a storage area?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
The intent is for it to look seamless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Other questions? I have one, and I think I know the answer to it, that this in no way interferes with programming. From your perspective, I'll ask the question of the administration for generally programming in that area. It won't have an impact.
From an event programming standpoint, it will not. We have spoken to the Folk Festival, which they tend to have the biggest footprint in that area. That is their backstage, if you will. And they were very supportive of the intent to expand that building. We have worked with them in the past where we've offered that some space to them during their event to store their brochures and what have you. Working with the community services staff, I believe that we will not have an impact on their normal operations, their current operations that happen out of the existing maintenance building.
Good. Thank you for that. Councillor Flagel.
Just thank you for coming forward. Just on this note of Folk Festival and that, was there any talk or consideration to building it a wee bit bigger? Because I know some events run over 2 days and there's certain equipment that maybe the organizations don't want to haul back and forth. Then you could store the stuff there on their insurance, of course. Was that ever considered, or is it just sort of a need for you guys and that's it?
Through your worship, we actually proposed a larger building there, but we also did not want to tear down the existing tree that's there, so the tree limited the size of the building. However, that was proposed as an option by the city if we were willing to take out the mature, beautiful tree that's there, and I just couldn't do it, so we kind of butted right up against it. And there are tree protection elements within the design and the construction of the building, so we will protect the tree that's there.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. If there's no other questions, you can return to the gallery, and we'll now look at Report 1725, which is expansion of the maintenance building in Victoria Park. Councillor Flagel.
Yes, this has been long overdue, and it's been one that's been brought forward because, of course, just by what the delegation's talking about, and this is CR 1725, and it's just the city working with putting an addition onto their own facility to accommodate what downtown is looking for, and we recommend concurrence because we think it's a good idea and it's well overdue. So, and plus it'll clean up the plaza from all the other little stores and shop, little things that cause storing here, storing there, and they can all be centrally located. We recommend concurrence.
Seconder for that, please. Councillor Murray, other discussion on that? Just to be clear, this will be funded by RD bid, but the maintenance and operation of it, maintenance of it will go to the city. Is that correct? Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, the capital project is funded by RD bid. The operating and capital replacement is, or the capital refurbishment is by RD bid also.
By them as well, okay.
That's correct.
Excellent. Hard to argue with that. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move into our delegations related to the Glockenspiel, and we have our first delegation, D17-31, Tara Funk.
Your Worship, before you get into your Glockenspiel, I am declaring conflict.
Okay.
I'm the Director of Regional Multicultural Council, and I believe the community with RMC have donated a Glockenspiel, so I will depart.
Thank you, Councillor Fedor. We'll wait until you leave the room until we proceed, so just a moment for the delegation. Please go ahead. If you identify yourself, we represent, and you have 5 minutes for your presentation as well.
Good evening. My name is Tara Funk. I am a condo owner in the Duncan building on the FW Hill on the Scarth Street Mall. I am representing our condo board from the Willoughby Condo Association. It has come to our attention that the City of Regina is discussing the reinstallment of the Glockenspiel into the Victoria Park Square, specifically the northeast corner. As residential residents of the area, we have concerns regarding the noise level. According to the Community and Protective Services Report, CPS 17.4, the City discussed this with the key stakeholders. One important key stakeholder the City did not discuss this with is the residential residents of the area. It is understood we are often overlooked, as our building does not possess prominent signage indicating that a condo building is located there. The other stakeholders mentioned do not live in the area and thus cannot provide the view of residents that may be affected by the noise of the bells. As discussed with Mr. Stevens, our Ward 3 councillor, we understand that there is an increased level of noise with living downtown. We expect that noise to come from vehicle and pedestrian traffic. It seems that the city often neglects the downtown residential residents with authorizing large amounts of noise. One clear example that we came up with was last summer a DJ company playing music loudly for an extended period of time of greater than 8 hours for no other purpose than to promote themselves. The Glockenspiel was originally installed before the units in our building were turned into condos. The condo owners that have resided there while the Glockenspiel was in use have indicated from their memory the noise of the bells was disruptive. We live in a heritage building, and we are not against heritage pieces. We greatly respect the history of our city. The opinion of our condo board differs on the cost of the reinstallment of the Glockenspiel, and that is not what I'm here to speak about. We request that consideration be given if the Glockenspiel is to be reinstalled, that it's moved from another place that is not near a residence. Perhaps one example being Wascana Park. If it must be installed in Victoria Park, we request for it to be moved further away from our residential areas. Though there is a number of condos surrounding the Victoria Park, this should be considered the disruptive noise at the level of the bells. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there questions for the delegation? There are none. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. Move on to our next delegation, DE 17-32, Chad Novak. For the record, Mr. Novak, if you could identify yourself once again. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards.
1 minute, please. I won't make it through without this. Okay, let's start now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, my name is Chad Novak, and you know who I am. I'm here to talk about the Regina Glockenspiel refurbishment and reinstallation. I first want to extend my sincerest gratitude and appreciation to the Regina German Club and the rest of the volunteers that have worked so hard over the past 7 years to get this situation corrected. By the sounds of the committee meeting, it is not clear exactly as to who made the final call to dismantle the Glockenspiel in 2010, but if it turns out that the final costs are indeed in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, might I suggest that the city do some investigative work to find out exactly who the party or parties responsible are and charge back whatever the incremental costs would have been since 2010. As it seems to have been willfully destroyed during the dismantling and allowed to further deteriorate in an outdoor city yard, a portion of it, I should say. To me, this is not respectful of our cultural heritage, and taxpayers deserve to know why it was allowed to happen, and whoever made that decision needs to be held to some kind of accountability. I'll leave that topic alone for now. Now, I've gladly and wholeheartedly supported the Regina German Club since learning of its fate through a member of the club just over a year ago. To me, there is nothing more important than celebrating our cultural heritage and our history, as that is something that we all know is lacking within Regina, or at least by the City of Regina organization. Not necessarily the residents of Regina, as is evident today. It is because of some amazing Regina residents and their willingness to continue to push forward in the face of adversity that we're all here this evening. Having grown up in Moose Jaw, just down the road, where our tourism industry literally helped the city recover from the ghost town that it was becoming in the 1980s. I know all too well the value of holding on to our past and not only celebrating it, but sharing it with the world. This is something that we desperately need to recognize as a municipal organization, but I'll talk more on that one another day as well. I must say that I was so proud to have addressed the committee on March 15th, as I have done so many times in the past, because finally, it felt as though my words had real meaning on that side of the table. Now, I respectfully requested that funding be done in one stage altogether, not the deferred two-stage approach as had been recommended by administration. And guess what? It was brought forward as an amendment and passed unanimously. The reason I pushed for this amendment was that I felt strongly that deferring this project any longer, especially with the open-ended reference of, quote-unquote, a future date, was both dangerous and disrespectful of the project as a whole. As I am sure the German community can attest to, it's already been deferred long enough. It's been 7 long years of banging their head against the brick wall for them, and they deserve to see this issue finally settled once and for all. Pardon me. Now, we've all had enough of the blame game, hiding it from a simple inspection as they had asked for time and time again, or pretending as though the city is somehow cash-strapped and needs to defer it for financial reasons. Now, for me, that argument has long since expired. As many of you who are here today were part of our previous council, which had absolutely no problems with building a $278.2 million stadium, which will provide no true, meaningful benefit to the residents of Regina, other than maybe a nice cup holder. Finally, this evening, I want to once again thank everyone involved in getting this to where it is tonight. I've done what I can to help push this forward, and I strongly encourage you all to support the motion as presented to you this evening. 100% funding by no later than the 2018 capital budget season. And I think it's very important to note that I have the utmost confidence, based on the quotes that have been received to date,
You have less than a minute to go.
that the true costs to refurbish and reinstate the Glockenspiel will be a mere fraction of that $512,000 estimate. I thank you for your time, and I will gladly answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Novak, for your submission. Any questions of the delegation? There are none. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
You can return to the gallery. And we'll move on to our next delegation, D17-33. Mr. Larry Schneider. Former Mayor Larry Schneider. Welcome.
Thank you for the welcome, Your Worship, members of City Council. As I was sitting back here just a moment ago, I conjured up the thought that this podium certainly gathers strange bedfellows. But we'll let you think about that for a while. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. We had the opportunity to address the committee, and the recommendation that the committee came through with was something that left us very optimistic. There's been much controversy surrounding this heritage site, this heritage object, in terms of the price quoted by one particular enterprising engineering professional body. When I presented this to a counterpart, I think they're still chuckling at how expensive this could be when it appears as though a form of governance is asking for public funds. There doesn't seem to be any limit to this. Now, I think that because the variation of 500,000 to 80-some thousand is so disparate, I don't believe that a layperson like myself should spend and waste any time trying to argue one way or another. So just to move on, other than the fact that not only did it bring this matter further to a head, it at the same time had a tendency to exaggerate the situation, I firmly believe. I was at a social function not too very long ago, and I heard unsolicited an individual comment about how they missed the glockenspiel in downtown Regina. Now, that, as I said, was unsolicited. My experience has been to get somebody to compliment your city in any way, shape, or form is a wonderful stroke of good luck. And so I commented to that fellow how much I really did enjoy that. But I thought, given some of the things that I have heard, there is a wrong impression of a glockenspiel. First of all, glockenspiel is German for bells being played, or something along that line. Webster describes this as a musical instrument made of metal bars that you play with little hammers, big hammers, depending on the size of the bell. Well, in an attempt to set this aside, this is simply an instrument to recognize the German culture. You will find that glockenspiels will be found in the following communities. First of all, in Ohio, Hocking Hills, the cultural theme of that glockenspiel is Scottish. In Washington State, Leavenworth, the theme is German. And in Colorado, a community called Ore, the theme is Netherlands. And by the way, that glockenspiel, if we think we've got a problem, they've got 147 bells attached to that. And last but by no means least, I was physically present in Lady Godiva Square in Coventry, England, as I saw her perform her thing, whatever that means, on a horse. Of course, it wasn't the real thing, but it impressed me. So for one to say that it belongs solely to a particular culture is not to say an actual fact. And the most surprising existence of this instrument has history tracing a glockenspiel back in China some 4,000 years ago. So, and I don't think they spoke German then, but I'm not sure. Points made. Our glockenspiel has not only been recognized as a tourist attraction, but carries with it, as I'm sure you know, the full support of the Regina Multicultural Council to go along with, as we have adorned the entryway to Queen Elizabeth Square, Confucius, Mahatma Gandhi, and Payapot. The community of Regina has financially supported our glockenspiel. Their names were inscribed on the base of the structure. Our family has donated 4 figures to it, and I know others have as well. To see it so indiscriminately cast aside was a shock. But I think that it's not my role here today to blame anybody, although one must recognize that in order to remove something, it's probably equated to a budget, to a plan, to a line of authority, and all the kinds of things that's usually associated with making something positive happen. I think that that day has come and gone. We're positively looking forward to what council is going to do in the future, and I know you have my greatest empathy for what you've gone through last night and have yet to go through in the
Mr.
future.
Shire, you have about 30 seconds.
That will do me just fine. So I'm willing to answer questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and welcome back to Councilor Chambers.
Thank you.
Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Your Worship, and welcome back, Mr. Schneider. My question for you is on, outside of the what you've laid out here in the letter, being that you were mayor when you first saw it installed and where it unfortunately is now, can you add anything else to the cultural impact that the Glockenspiel has brought to the city?
Could you repeat that question, please?
Is there anything you can add outside of your presentation to the cultural impact that the Glockenspiel has brought to our city?
Well, I'd like to emphasize the plan to construct, the plan to demolish. There had to be a plan, and the apparent disappearance of all of this for a period of time. Unfortunately, time was not on our hands, and the positive attitude that was expressed at the time of Councillor Flagle's chairmanship with respect to all the positive things that the Glockenspiel brings. Now, I think that I heard the delegation before me make a comment about the sound. That, to me, to be, what do I know about Glockenspiels, but don't they have a volume control on there? You know, I don't know the answer to that, but certainly that has to be, I empathize with that as a concern. If, in fact, the manner in which it was being played at that time was such that it was an imposition on peace, quiet, and contentment on a Sunday morning, rather, that should be addressed somehow.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Councilor Bryce?
Thank you. We have heard concerns about noise, as you heard. What is your opinion about moving it to another location rather than it being in Victoria Park?
Well, I was asked that question quite some time ago, and the committee was asked that question quite some time ago. And I suppose for every location, there's another location, and it was decided by those that care to express an opinion that what is wrong with where it was. For instance, there is a significant structure that held the Glockenspiel up. I trust that that wasn't excavated along with everything else. I don't know, but you would think there is some savings there. Second point, people are aware of that as a location, as evidenced by the comment that was made about how peaceful it is to walk through Victoria Park. The fact is that this is supposed to be symbolic of the center of the city, the center of the activity, culturally, economically, and everything else that goes along with a thriving community. And so it seemed to be in a good shape, in a good position, rather. I'm not sure that you could circumvent that by having another location. I know that there was a sponsor if we put it out in the suburbs. Well, yeah, I know in particular the East Regina, that's where us Krauts were raised, right? But that doesn't do us any good. What does us good is the harmony that we have with one another and recognizing. For instance, I mentioned the Indian culture, I mentioned the Chinese culture, I mentioned indigenous culture. How wonderful it is that we are able to show that to the public as an example of getting along together.
Thank you. The reason I'm asking you is because you brought up those other monuments that are here around City Hall, the ones that you mentioned. So, and we also have out front the monument to immigrants. And I was just thinking that if you had any input on locating it at City Hall versus the park, so that's how that came about, that question.
I don't consider that a bad location particularly, but I am getting a little concerned with all that's being funneled into the front of City Hall. It's starting to get a little congested. And who am I? I'm not a designer, so. But if you want an opinion, there you go.
Thank you for your opinion.
Thank you, Councilor Bryce. Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Schneider. You can return to the gallery, and thank you for your comments.
Good luck in your budget debates.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Our next delegation, DE 17-34, Alvin Knoll. Mr. Knoll, if you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent. You have 5 minutes and maybe questions afterwards.
Thank you. Good afternoon, or I'm sorry, good evening now, Your Worship, City Councilors, and committee members. My name is Alvin Knoll, and I'm here to speak in support of the motion before you regarding the reinstallation of the glockenspiel. I've had several opportunities to speak to this issue over the past few months and would like to reiterate the importance of the glockenspiel to the German community, both as a tribute to our cultural heritage and as a symbol of cultural diversity and harmony in the city of Regina. It is very important to us for the glockenspiel to take its rightful place in Victoria Park, alongside the many other cultural works of art and monuments that can be found throughout the city. I've had the opportunity to work closely with the German community, city staff, and the Community and Protective Services Committee, and would like to thank them for the work that has been done to bring this motion forward. I've also had the privilege of working with members of Heritage Regina, the Regina Multicultural Council, the Regina Downtown Association, the Multicultural Council of Saskatchewan, and several city councillors, all of who have endorsed the reinstallation of the glockenspiel. Last Thursday afternoon, several members of the German community and I were invited to the city yard to inspect the bells and the bell tower. I was impressed with the condition of the bells and how they've been wrapped and stored in a secure place. The bell tower itself will need to be refinished, but this is not a serious or difficult problem to fix. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have viewed the bells, and would like to thank the Community and Protective Service Committee for arranging the viewing. It gave us confidence that the restoration of the bells is perhaps not as big a challenge as was first surmised. Recently, a number of people from Regina and across the continent who have some expertise with bells and glockenspiels have contacted the city and the German community. There are now more opportunities to pursue a better cost for the project, and these should all be explored. The original inscription on the plaque of the tower spoke of the ringing harmony as all cultures come together. For the people who worked so hard to have the glockenspiel erected in 1985, it was a symbol of the diversity of this city working together for the good of all people. This is an ideal we still value. In conclusion, I would like to add that in light of the fiscal restraints the provincial budget has placed on the city, we understand that the projected cost of $512,000 for glockenspiel is not palatable at this time, but it would be our hope that we could at least proceed as proposed by the Community and Protective Services Committee motion, and that we be given a timeline for the completion of the project. We look forward to continuing our work together with the city to move this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knoll, for your presentation. Are there questions? Councillor Flegel.
Thank you, and welcome back, and good to see you here and the rest of the community. We talked about the structure, we talked about the electronics. Is there, and I like how you said the word glockenspiel, because you brought your German accent out with you. Mr. Schneider, you should work on that a little bit. But I'm wondering about, there was some concern in the community about the noise. Is there a set, regular time that the glockenspiel is supposed to go off? Is it every hour? Is it noon and 6? Is there a heritage time that it should go?
Okay, again, different cities would play at different times. Like I know in Munich, downtown Munich, they play it at dinner time, 12 o'clock, and I believe again at 6 o'clock. They have the full function of the glockenspiel. It would depend probably what the community would like. I'm sure it's 12 o'clock afternoon, possibly a 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. time setting would be great. We may propose a seasonal thing, like at Christmas time. Mm-hmm. It may go on a little bit more oftener, but again, that would be entirely up to the committee to decide any kind of time programming.
Okay, thank you. Along with that, if I could through you, is there a specific tune that it plays, a song, or does it have a rhythm to the chiming? Enlighten us a little bit if you know.
Okay, the glockenspiel actually can be volume can be increased or decreased depending how it works in the community. Tune-wise, again, you can go back to your seasonal thing. I mean, Christmas time, I'd expect to have Christmas tunes being played to a point, okay? Any tune could be programmed into it. I mean, the sky's the limit, basically.
Okay, but there is no standard format that this should play it at this certain time. We could do...
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, that's good to know. I appreciate your comments on thanking the administration for the tour. We set that up at the last Community and Protective, only because I think your organization or someone in your organization thought that it was wrecked and in disarray. Your opinion still is it's pretty good, probably much like it was when it got laid there in 2009 or 10, whenever that was. Is that true?
That's correct. I only was permitted to see one bell. I think there's 22 or 30 bells. Forgive me for that number. But anyways, if we can judge the balance of the bells from the one bell we did see with the clapper in place, the bells would be in very good condition. Also, the clapper that we noted on the one bell was in very, very good condition, hardly any wear. So I'm not a bell person, but I would think that the clappers may not have to be replaced, and that would indicate less of a cost. And the tower, there would be a section that would have to be welded back to the base of the tower to get a good height. I'm not sure, again, the height, I believe, might have been 18 feet prior. I think the 4 feet or 5 feet might have been taken off and left in the concrete base when it was removed. So that would be something we'd have to pursue to extend the tower length.
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor. In one of the 3 meetings that we sat together and looked at, and of course more discussions, but there was an artist rendering of what the structure would look like. You're familiar with the drawing? And we're going to use city material, some old city hall brick, that type of thing. Can you kind of let us know a little bit more what you thought of that, or as your group did?
Okay, we were quite impressed with the proposed project. The concrete base, just going by memory now, may be 6 to 7 feet tall, roughly, with the tower extending from there. The base of the concrete, I'll call it concrete base, to my understanding, is to be clad with not tinglestone, but thank you, granite from the city yard, and that would be put on by the city, I believe, as well. So the end result would be very, very impressive. Yes.
Okay, but so far so good. We're all still talking to each other, and we're happy, right?
As far as I know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I appreciate your coming forward and the representatives of your community coming forward. I just want to ask a question I think to know the answer to. Would your community be willing and anxious to work with the city in terms of finding an appropriate design and appropriate installation method and price range for this glockenspiel?
That's not a very hard question to answer. Yes, definitely.
That's my only one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Other questions of the delegation? Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery and move on to our final delegation, Bryce Van Loozen. If you could come forward and identify yourself for the record, who you represent. And you as well have 5 minutes for your presentation, and members of council may have a question or two afterwards.
Hi there. My name is Bryce Van Loozen. I'm also with the Regina German Club. Good afternoon, Mayor Fougere, City Councilors, and committee members. I'm here on behalf of the German Club, and I wish to speak in support of the motion before you regarding the restoration and the proposed costs that have been brought forward. Thank you for allowing me to address the City Council with my concerns. The restoration of the glockenspiel has recently become a hot topic amongst the German community, but also across the city and beyond. We believe that the project such as this should be planned, designed, and completed with the help of our local skilled labor as much as possible, using the most cost-effective options available. We understand that some specific aspects may need to be sourced elsewhere, and that some of the project may require highly specialized out-of-town facilitators. With no outreaching, we have already received a lot of interest from skilled people who have expressed a desire to be part of this project after hearing about the projected budget of $512,000. These skilled people have offered their free service relating to their field of expertise. We have forwarded you their contact info and are currently in the process of establishing other potential contributors. We are very much interested in contributing to the process however we can. Please consider what we feel to be a far better funding model for this project when it comes time to vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van Loozen, for your presentation. Are there questions of the delegation? Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Van Loozen, for coming back and addressing this important issue. I have a question as the Ward 3 councillor. I've received a phone call or two from residents downtown expressing concern. We heard from Ms. Funk this evening. On behalf of the German Club, and I can't say that you are the representative of the German community, but would you be willing together to meet with residents downtown to discuss their concerns about noise, the glockenspiel, and any other matters?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, this is a part of the community. We don't want to be hard-headed on this. We want to work with any of the other stakeholders, of course.
Can we do this at the German Club?
Most definitely.
All right, so
We have a lot of craft beer there as well.
Well said. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other? Councillor Bryce?
He's got such a great first name. How could I not get up and ask him a question, right?
It's even spelled right, too.
Exactly. So you're talking about, your exact words were, please consider what we feel to be a far better funding model for this project. So tell us more about this.
Well, I mean, speaking in fairly general terms, I guess that we're basically just looking for, we want the most amount of community involvement as possible, and we feel that based on the responses that we've been given, not only from local businesses, but from businesses that are actually nowhere near Regina, we received a lot of interest on this, and some of the interest that we've been given has actually been offering free services towards the restoration of the piece.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your input. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Bresciani?
Thank you very much for coming forward again, and to the German community. It is very, very important, and we want you to know that on behalf of the city. We are a multicultural city, so this is very, very important. One of the questions that I know, and I've had concerns from residents both for and against, so the question that I have is that in light of the budget, and depending on the cost, and it's great if the costs can come in nice and low, but the question I have is, would there be an opportunity where we would come together with the city, and the German Club would work together with the city, coming up with a proposal to find out the best deal that would work, and using some of the resources that the German Club has as well. And then also, depending on the quote, because we don't know, but would there be some opportunity, if it had to be, that the German Club would do any kind of little fundraising or something to bring awareness to the community at all?
When you say resources, can you clarify, please? In a general sense, or just money?
Just, yeah, money, or, partnering in some way. So if it's doing a little fundraiser at the German Club, or if it's something to bring to a piece of the puzzle, or in work with the community groups from the German community that may help out to make it cheaper.
Yeah, to speak to that, I mean, obviously it is a community piece, and the German Club's part of the community. We would have interest in that, but on the other side of that coin, we also feel that the community had given a great amount of money in the initial installation, and we were wondering how that affects us, being that the piece was torn down by the city and with no consultation. So I guess what I'm saying is we don't feel that it's necessarily our responsibility, but of course we would be happy to help in the process.
So you would be willing, sorry, through you, Your Worship, you would be willing to work with the city to ensure that the glockenspiel gets back up?
Of course, that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Other questions? Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery, and we'll now
Thank you.
Move forward with the report. But before we do, I just wondered with the administration if they have any background or context comments before we consider the report. Mr. Onright?
Through you, Your Worship, I'll maybe make some comments and give a little bit of background to the process. The $512,000 estimate provided by the consultant is a very general, overarching estimate of what the project will cost. It's been broken into two phases. The first phase of that in the report, so the second item on the report, asking for up to $300,000 on the structural, $212,000 in the third item in the report for future consideration. The first item on the report refers to detailed design. Once the detailed design, if approved by council, We would engage in an RFP, would go to a group to provide that detailed design back to the administration. And once administration received the detailed design, we would enter into conversations with the community to determine what the best approach is, whether there are local businesses that would be able to contribute towards the project, and then determine through our procurement process whether this was one tender, as noted by one of the delegations. There are pieces of this project that could be done locally, but there are some aspects of this project that cannot be done locally. There is a very select group of vendors that would be able to do this work. But recognizing the importance and the price tag of $512,000, which also has a 30% contingency in that price. So that was a recommendation from the consultant because there are a lot of unknowns. The reason for the detailed design from a consultant is this is a tall piece of art, and there's a structural component to this that needs to be properly designed to support it for the care and safety of the community moving forward. So the $25,000 for detailed design starts the process. Administration will definitely consult with the community once we receive that to see what the best approach is to going forward with a tender or multiple tenders, depending on what the local vendor pool is that would be able to do some of this work. Example would be sandblasting and painting of the structure. We are sure that can be done locally, but we do have a procurement department that will tell us how to approach that, but we definitely would involve the community.
Thank you, Mr. Onright, for those comments. I'll turn this now over to Councillor Flagel.
Thank you.
To introduce the report.
Thanks. The residents supported CR 17-26 and recommendations of Community Protective Service on March 16th. And Mr. Onright was right. There was a different set of recommendations brought forward, but at the committee they changed it up a little bit, and that $25,000 be allocated for general fund reserve to undertake detailed design for the restoration of the Regina Glockenspiel. I'm going to read the other three, but that's up to $500,000. $512,000 be considered in the 2018 capital budget for restoration of the structure and mechanical elements of Regina Glockenspiel in its installation and servicing of the selected site in the northeast corner of Victoria Park. That an annual repair and refurbish capital budget of $2,000 be considered through the 2018 budget process, and then an annual program budget of $4,000 be considered through the budget process once the Carillon bell ringing system has been installed. This was approved by Committee of Community Protective Services. If I could speak to it real briefly.
I'll just ask for a seconder.
Seconder, please.
Seconder for it, please. Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Stevens. This was something we just talked about, and I know Councillor Stevens is going to have a few more words on this one, but basically this is a culmination of 3 backroom meetings discussing things, talking with German Community Association, Downtown, Heritage, German Society, I'm sorry, the Heritage Committee, Jackie Schmidt and her sidekick, and a few other groups, and it was determined that there was like 6 different locations where this could go, and it was always going back to, well, why can't we put it back where it was? It was good there. It fit there. There's room there. It's that corner, and other things for the northwest side of the plaza will be looked at down the road to fill little gaps and stuff, because now that trailer is going to be gone, we'll need to put a nice monument up there instead of the trailer that used to be on the plaza. So that was sort of the determining factor on the location. Cost was always up in the air. We never knew what it was. And until we started fishing, and as we started fishing, we started finding that there was more hooks that were coming in the line, and there was more people thinking, oh, I know somebody, and I know somebody, and I know somebody. Well, now we've got probably 3 or 4 different places that might have an opportunity to put not so much the structure, but the mechanisms, the bells, and on everything. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I'll let if anybody else has any questions or discussion, they can bring it forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, I think. I'm going to start by saying I am not a glockenspiel expert by any means or a specialist. But I'm going to wonder, and I'm going to ask maybe if through you, Mr. Mayor, to maybe get administration to respond to some of these questions. We have a structure that was in our park. Why do we need somebody to come in and do detailed design for something that we already have? So that would be my first question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Onrait.
Through your worship, I believe that structure was taken down during the Plaza project.
So do we not have the original detailed plans of what was there?
Mr. Onrait.
Through your worship, I'll ask Ms. Shaley to comment.
Ms. Shaley.
Through you, your worship, the detailed designs will address, for example, the design of the base. The base is a fairly significant component. The bells, some of the bells weigh as much as 600 pounds, and so there's a fairly significant amount of work, expertise required to design the base. As well, the glockenspiel did not have a reliable operating system when it was in the park. The administration worked with the community many times to upgrade the operating system, and so part of this work would involve finding a suitable and reliable operating system that could address some of the noise issues that were raised by some of the delegations earlier. So those are some of the examples that would be addressed through the design work.
So are we saying we never had an original design for this piece?
Ms. Shaley.
Through you, your worship, I'll have our Manager of Community and Cultural Development, Emmeline Hill, provide some further detail.
Ms. Hill.
Through you, your worship, we do have the original plans from the architect who installed the glockenspiel in 1985. My understanding is that the project requires significant technical expertise. It requires underground locates, and as Ms. Shaley was saying, the assurance that it can withstand the weight of the bells and that they will be properly balanced, and that requires us to relook at that design and prepare it again from the beginning.
Okay. I worry as a caretaker of the money of the people of Regina, their tax dollar, that we're spending $25,000 for a design of something that we've already got a rough design for. I understand there may be some more electronics and some more structural things in there, but I worry about spending that much money. I also worry when I see the cost of $512,000. So maybe I will ask for more information on that, because things I'm hearing from the public, including the German community, is unless we're going to lace it in gold, I don't think that it's going to cost $512,000. So maybe if I could get a response for that as well.
Mr. Onrait.
Through you, your worship. So maybe make a comment regarding the detailed design and why we would have to have somebody have a look at that and prepare a new detailed design. As the standards have changed over time for structural design, that's why we were proposing to have a new detailed design done and not use the old one, which is a number of years old. Regarding the $512,000, as I indicated earlier, that is strictly an estimate. The detailed design will allow us to get a detailed estimate. So of all the work and components that need to be refurbished, the base for the glockenspiel, for the actual structure, to get that priced out effectively, and we would work and will work with the community, the multicultural community and the German community. If they have names that they're bringing forward, then we will have a look at those, and through our tender process, or whether that work can be allocated to an individual business, or whether it would be an individual business that would care to volunteer the labor to do some of that work, we would work with our procurement area and ensure that that could possibly happen.
Thank you for that information. So what would the implications be if somebody said tonight that I'm not comfortable with the $500,000, that we should have a limit that's a lot less than that? What if somebody made the comment, I think we should have an upper limit of $100,000 for this? What would be the response from administration through you, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Onrait?
Through your worship, at this point in time, we don't have that number. In the report, we are asking for up to $300,000. The second item, the fifth item, the fourth item, which refers to the additional $218,000, that is also an estimate. And that's administration had recommended putting that into future years. So the total of those two coming forward from the change from Community Protective Services being the total of $518,000 would be up to $518,000. But that does include a 30% contingency for this project because of the unknown.
Thank you. And maybe I'll ask the clerk to clarify.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe the total is up to $512,000, but I do think that with respect that perhaps Mr. Onrait was reading from the Community and Protective Services Committee report where there were two sections. I think that's what perhaps has confused you, Councillor Bryce.
Okay. Thank you. Now, we've heard from delegations tonight as well that this was taken down from the park without consultation with the group that it was donated to. How do we avoid this from happening ever again with anything else that we have that was donated from a group or means something to us as city residents through you, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Onrait?
Through your worship, I'll ask Ms. Shaley to comment.
Ms. Shaley?
Through you, Your Worship, today the city lacks civic art policy, which is an important policy document that most municipalities would use to guide decisions related to the acquisition and maintenance of public arts. Administration, this is an item that emerged as a high priority through the development of the cultural plan, and so administration is going to be starting to work on a civic art policy later in 2017. It will be brought to council in 2018.
Thank you. That was my next question then. When are we going to have a city civic art policy? So obviously you've answered that question. We've also heard from the community about the noise, and I've also heard from the community about that there always seem to be maintenance issues, which I think were alluded to as well with this piece of art. So I have concerns, and I still have concerns with the $512,000. I'm pondering whether I should to move an amendment to decrease that amount. But maybe I'll listen to what others have to say before I do that.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I'll start with a question. First about noise. Can you tell me what kind of noise regulations or bylaws would impact the ringing of these bells in the downtown, especially in the evening?
Mr. Onrait?
Through your worship, maybe just clarify, through conversations with the community, with the German club, it's my understanding the old bell ringing system rang on the hour. Through discussions with the community, there has been talk about having, as indicated by one of the delegations, having the bells ring at noon and possibly 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm going to ask Ms. Shaley or our city solicitor to maybe comment on the noise bylaw.
Ms. Shaley?
Through you, Your Worship, the ringing of the bells is exempt from the noise bylaw. As Mr. Onrait has already mentioned, we've worked with some of the community groups our major stakeholders to discuss the schedule. A lot of the concerns in the past related to the ringing of the bells was because they were ringing on every hour. The plan right now is to ring the bells twice a day, potentially between 12 and 1, and then between 5 and 6. As well, we believe that if we put an appropriate, reliable operating system in place, we'll be in a position to modify the schedule as needed. So as an example, if there's a special event in the park, we'd be able to turn off the system so that it doesn't ring during those special events.
Thank you. I'd like to move an amendment to this motion. Let's give Verna some time.
Okay.
With respect to items 2, 3, and 4 in the recommendation, I would like to strike those entirely and replace with the following. That administration issue an RFP for the design and build of the structure and return to the Community and Protective Services Committee with estimates by Q4 of 2017.
So just to be clear, but an RFP, you're speaking of not eliminating recommendation number 1, which would be 25,000
That's
for
correct. That will
for
stay.
the detailed design. That stays.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
So could we?
If you can read my writing. Yeah.
We're going to find out.
It's hieroglyphic.
So the amendment reads that the administration issue an RFP for the design of the structure and return to the Community Protective Services Committee with an estimate by the fourth quarter of 2017. We're clear on the amendment. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councilor Bryce. Discussion on the amendment. Okay. You want to speak to it, Councilor Stevens? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, a couple quick points. I want to see this thing restored and back in operation. You have my commitment to want to advance this. There's been a couple of issues that have arisen, namely the financial crisis that we're now facing as a city. What we have on the table is also incomplete information. Since the CPS committee met, we've had a number of new estimates, new information coming to our attention that suggests the price can come radically down. And so what this will allow the administration to do is actually field a competitive bidding process. And so we'll get, I think, a better sense of how much this is going to cost. And based on what I've heard from the German community and other advocates of the Glockenspiel, this is actually what people want to see. I would say, and I don't want to speak for the German community, we'd probably all be better off if that $512,000 bullseye wasn't being seen by the public. So this is a more accurate representation of what this is going to cost. It needs to happen. And I will remind the delegation, as well as the community here tonight, item 1 stays. This project is still on the go. So nothing has been killed here. There's also a deadline to make sure that a proposal comes back to the committee for our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stevens. Councilor Bresciani.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I, too, will support this. In the same vein, is that we want to see this move forward. This is something for our community, our German community, and I think one of the things is, in light of the budget, I mean, this is why, I mean, the big number was 500,000 or whatever it was that people were concerned about, and rightly so. So this motion now speaks to the city and the German community working together and finding, working together to find the best deal to ensure that it's up and it's working. And I think the biggest piece is that when you come together and you're working as a community, I mean, I think that's what Regina is about. So I will support this.
Thank you, Councilor Bresciani. Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, administration would just ask that the word detailed be inserted in front of design, so the detailed design of the structure.
Sure. We can make that a friendly amendment to be more clear. Okay, Councilor Flagel.
Thanks. This is just another one of steps 1 through 10, or however many we have to go through to get these things done. And it's just one of these things that we deal with all the time. Going through the RFP is just a normal, standard city process when we have to go out and spend some money that we know there's possibly, we always talked of one, but we knew there was multitude of companies that could do that. The only thing I would suggest is that in this particular case, typically when we RFP, do we do one project, one person, that's it? Or can we talk about, sandblasting in Regina and bells in Ontario? And how can we split this up? Because maybe, as we talked about earlier, a lot of this project can be done by local tradespeople, or some.
Likely the detailed design stage would cover that. Mr. Onright?
That is correct. That would be the result of the work coming out of the detailed design. Those discussions would take place after we receive the detailed design.
And then also that, I know we scrapped 2 through, I just thought of this, but then this would also go forward into the 2018 deliberations for budget money, right? Do we need to put that
Mr.
in
Onright?
here?
May or may not. Mr. Onright?
As number 3 states. I think the old number 3.
That's not there.
No, that's not it. No, that's the
not
annual
applicable
repair.
anymore.
But we talked about it being part of the 2018 deliberations for budget money to do the whole thing at $512,000. But if it comes in at whatever the number is, we haven't got anything in that that amendment that says that we'll talk about this in for the 2018 budget. So do we need to have that in there, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I think, if I might, just on a procedure, as you read this, it says that there'd be a report that comes back by the fourth quarter of this year.
Right.
And that will answer the question in terms of what budget year it's going to be in. I think we need the information first.
I just want to clarify that, so good. I'm good with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Hawkins? Oh, I thought you were motioning to do it. Councillor Donald.
Thanks. I think good motion, Andrew. Thanks for bringing this forward. I think clearly I want to state that this is part now of a budget deliberation. That's what a report gives us to do. At that time, if we are favorable, I would also ask that we look back at what was taken off, and that is that annual refurbishing, that annual repair, so that would be included at that time. Let's do the work first. Thank you.
Other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Stevens, you could take the chair, please.
Your Worship.
Thank you. To the amendment, I want to thank the delegations for appearing and being so pleased and wanting to help out and assist in getting this wonderful piece of art and culture back to our downtown. I support the amendment. Councillor Stevens, thank you for putting it forward. It brings clarity and it gets away this issue of the $500,000 when we're looking at, frankly, a financial circumstance really unparalleled for the city. But I want to go back to, at least from my perspective, what has gone on for me to say I fully support this project 100%. This piece of art was removed by the city, as it ought to have been when you're looking at putting a plaza in, but it was not returned to its proper place. And there was no consultation with the community, and I don't know any further other than to say that nothing took place. But I also want to say that the city administration took care of that piece of art. The bells, the clappers are all set aside, they're dry, they're indoors. The rest is meant to be outdoors. It isn't a secure place. And some of the commentary that it was thrown into like a junkyard, I think, are unfair and disrespectful both to our community, to our staff, and to what actually took place. So, what's the next step? I've always said we should replace this and put this in place, and so I'm very, very excited that it will happen. We removed the issue of the $500,000 because we know there are other numbers that are more realistic and more approachable to be discussed, and we also know that the community is willing to help out in many, many ways. So I would urge members of council to support this. The investment for the detailed design is critical, so we know exactly what those costs are going to be. And for all the reasons the administration put forward about new standards of construction and the weight of the structure itself and the base are all things we need to do that can't be captured on the architectural design. It can't be. So I support it, and let's move forward with this one. Whether it's in this year budget or next year, it, to me, is secondary, that it will be part of a budget process. And I'm more than happy to speak to putting down what I think is an essential cultural aspect of our community, brought forward by the Multicultural Association and the German community, and I think it's great for us. So let's move forward. Thank you. Other speakers to the amendment? We all are clear what it is? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. To the main motion as amended. Other speakers? Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I share your comments that you've just made, and I also share the importance of getting the glockenspiel back in place. I, too, was concerned about the numbers that we've been seeing, and I'm glad they're out of the motion. I want to ask the administration a few questions about the first clause of the motion, the one dealing with the detailed design. How do you determine who will do the detailed design?
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, that'll be done through a competitive process, through our procurement.
I'm sorry, through a
competitive process.
And how do you? As I read it, that up to $25,000. That doesn't necessarily mean that $25,000 will be spent on a detailed design, does it?
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, that is correct.
And am I correct to say that's just a very general estimate so that this can move forward?
Through Your Worship, that is correct.
Thank you very much. Your Worship, I'm comforted by those examples, those answers. My impression is that $25,000 is a lot of money for a detailed design. I hope that it can come in more reasonably priced than that, but I also think that this does have to move forward, so I'm going to support it. But I urge the administration to exercise fiscal restraint in seeking the detailed design as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Other speakers to the main motion as amended. Councillor Young.
Your Worship, I have a couple of questions. One is, do we have any idea of what the original cost was back in 1985?
Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, I'll ask Ms. Shaley to comment.
Ms. Shaley?
Through you, Your Worship, the original cost was $88,000.
Okay, thank you. The German community and the Multicultural Council contributed something toward that. Do you have that figure?
Ms. Shaley?
Through you, Your Worship, of the $88,000, the community funded the full amount with the exception of $30,000, which was a contribution from the city.
Okay. So I think that the way we're going with this, to have the design done first, is the right way to approach it. But usually when we get reports back, there's some background in history, and I think it would be important to put into that history the acknowledgement of what the German community paid for the original glockenspiel, and as well the work that the city did to preserve the bells and part of the tower, because I think all of that is an important part of the history. So I would ask that that would be included in the history when it comes back to us as a report. And I really look forward to hearing those bells again on the plaza, and I'm sure we can work out a way that it will not be a problem to people who live in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. To the administration, an undertaking to provide a more historical background of the origins of the glockenspiel funding arrangements and community involvement. Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, we will do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Other speakers to the report as amended? I'll call the question. All those in favor? You want to close debate? Okay. Councillor Flagel, got to get your hand up quicker.
Well, I thought I was going to get the nod, so thanks. I appreciate it. No, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things, but one, I just want to know if does the administration have your go-forward calculator out as $88,000 in 1985? How much is that today's dollars? Does anybody know? Anybody have a rough idea what that
Take a
could
guess, Councillor Flagel. Mr. Onright.
Advice from our city manager said more.
More. Okay, that's what I
With a
kinda
dollar
thought.
sign next to it, right? Yes.
That's what I kind of thought. I just want to close by, I want to thank a bunch of people, because there is no way one person can stand here and say it was because of me that this was going on, whether it be on the street or whether it be in this chamber. I mean, I brought the motion forward. The German Club brought multitude of opportunities for us to look at this and do that. Our staff brought forward, I think, 11 locations as to where this could go. You know, the different groups that were sitting in the three meetings, the meetings in the little room over here and the one over here, Community Protective Services, staff here. Nobody can put their finger on this and say, it was because of me. It was because of the community. And that's what we like to know. That's what we like to see. And this is one piece of heritage. We have a whole bunch of heritage pieces out front in City Hall. And our former mayor, Lair, decided that there was probably enough there, so let's put it back where it was. And I agree that we can make those bells ring properly for the residents of the area. And if it can go at noon and 5 or noon and 6, I think that should take care of a lot of things. But first, we need to get the right RFP out there. We need to get the right design, which I think we have a pretty good picture of it. And I think that this is well underway. And for those of you back in September of 2016, when this motion was brought forward, a lot of times things in this hall take a year, year and a half to take on. So bear with us. It's all going to hopefully come together once we get some RFPs back in Q4, which is October, November, sometime in that line, I'm assuming. And we'll take a look at it then and deliberate it over the 2018 budget, providing it's where it's going to be. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. You've closed the debate, so there is no further debate allowed. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
5-minute recess?
10-minute recess. Seconder, please. Councillor Young, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll see everyone back at 8:20.
It was on the report itself.
Mr. Clerk, I'm glad you finally arrived, Mr. Clerk. That's good. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll call the meeting back to order, and we'll get down to our committee reports. Executive Committee, the SAMA Agency Annual General Meeting, Report 17-27. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Worship. I see concurrence on 17-27, Saskatchewan Assessment Management Agency Annual General Meeting, that Councillor Joel Murray be appointed as the voting delegate for the City of Regina for the Saskatchewan Assessment Management Agency Annual General Meeting, and that other members of City Council attending the SAMA Annual General Meeting be appointed as non-voting delegates.
A seconder for that report, please. Councillor Bryce. Discussion? Pretty straightforward. I'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Murray, you are the one that's nominated, by the way.
Thank you, Worship.
Clarification of that?
I'll just add, I've got an extensive knowledge library from the former Councillor Murray that I can access to be our voting delegate. So
there you go.
If I could just add to the discussion on that note, I might seek another candidate if I could then.
Your Worship.
We're not having coup d'etat here. We're just going to SAMA. This is just SAMA. Councillor Hawkins.
I was simply going to add, if that's the qualification, I might not vote for him.
Let's vote before we have any more disparaging remarks, sir. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next report is the Report 28, the Regina Wastewater Treatment Plant Upgrade Project. We will require another motion to add to remove from the outstanding list of reports. So if you could include that in your motion, Councillor Stevens.
Walk me through this. So I seek concurrence on Regina Wastewater Treatment Plant Upgrade Project, Hulled Wastewater Station consideration.
Okay, point of order, Councillor Fendura.
Your Worship, I will excuse myself. I declare conflict.
Okay.
Thank you.
Duly noted.
It's the company I'm employed by does business with the haulers.
Okay, that's good. Okay. More pizza. Okay. Councillor Stevens.
And the recommendation is as follows, that City Council authorize the city manager or designate to negotiate and enter into an amendment to the wastewater treatment plant project agreement and any ancillary documents to transfer the operation, maintenance, and infrastructure renewal of the hauled wastewater station to EPCOR Water Prairies Incorporated. The negotiation and amendment to the project agreement would consider the following items: placement and transfer of operating risk from HWS, that the cost of operation and maintenance for the HWS be reasonable when compared to the initial estimates that were developed in the HWS business model of the city's cost to operate and maintain the HWS. Do I have to read all this?
You don't have to. You can just speak. You can just speak to what's in the essence of it.
I would further. I'd like to amend the motion to remove this from the list of outstanding items as well.
And that would be a G. Or
a G. Add.
Add a G on that one to remove from the list.
All right. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor O'Donnell. We'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Speakers to the report. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. I want to seek a little clarity on this, please. One, first of all, I'm in support of this. Two, can I ask a little bit about fees and charges on this and how that will work? Very generally.
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, the city will continue to set the fees for the use of the hauled waste station, and we will also invoice all customers.
Thanks for that. If I could, just as a follow-up, all of the haulers have been made aware of this, and when does the fees start?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, we've done a number of public engagements to engage the haulers on this new facility. I'll ask Mr. Doney to provide some information on when the fees would be implemented.
Through your worship, Council approved a report on March of 2016 for the new fees of the facility, and they started in they were effective September 30th, 2016, and then January 1st, 2017, and then going up again in January 1st, 2018. So the fees will be implemented when this new facility is up and running, which is expected to be in the near future.
Thanks for that. If I could just provide you all with a little history. When I was first elected, I had a little tour of a place called Oriole Place, and this is what we used to have. 2 pipes in the ground, no fencing around it, no nothing. Trucks would just magically show up, attached to it, put some product in these pipes. Kids were playing approximately 25 feet away, and there was no monitoring and no anything on this. This is huge. This is necessary. And you'll note that when I said there was a pipe in the ground, that means there was no collection of fees. So we don't have a whole lot of septage come out of the city of Regina. We have some, but we collect it from a lot of other areas around the community. This is another one of those regional projects. I'm thrilled to see this come forward now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Massanelli?
I just had a couple questions about the environmental aspects of this facility. I noticed in some reports that there's been some question to who monitors the environmental aspects, whether it's the province or the city, or if there are some holes in the system. I was wondering if anything in relation to that falls under this facility.
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I'll start and then I'll have Mr. Court perhaps add some information. We are certainly governed by some environmental regulations that will be followed in this new facility. Additionally, we're required to ensure or monitor the quality of wastewater that will go to our new wastewater treatment plant, and that has a huge effect on why this facility is being put into place. I'll ask Mr. Court if he has anything else to add from the environmental aspects.
Mr. Court?
Through you, Your Worship, the wastewater treatment plant permit to operate is what we are regulated on, and that really is the aspects of monitoring the discharge to Wascana Creek after it's gone through the treatment process. And with respect to what comes into the hauled wastewater station, it's really our sewer use bylaw, our bylaw that regulates what industry can do and what's acceptable within industry. So we are a regulator, and then we are also responsible for ensuring that we maintain proper environmental standards through our permit to operate.
Thank you, Councilor Massanelli. Other questions or comments on the report? I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll now move on to the 2017 appointments to the Board of Directors of RD Bid. Councilor Stevens.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, that I seek concurrence on the 2007 appointments to the Board of Directors for Regina Downtown Business Improvement District. The following individuals are being recommended: Mr. Mike Momona, Mr. Gary Fisher, Mr. Bob Kasian, Mr. Chad Haiti, Mr. Aaron Murray, that these members continue to hold office for the term indicated or until successors are appointed.
You might want to speak to recommendation number 5 as well, please. And then if you could add as well, once again, this report be removed from the outstanding list of items.
Absolutely. That the Regina Downtown bid be directed to include diversity as a requirement criteria in the selection for board members in the future. And I would seek to amend the motion to include a 6th item here, remove this item from the list of outstanding.
Okay, that last one is actually an amendment. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Councilor Murray. On the amendment, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. To the main motion as amended. Any discussion? Councilor Hawkins.
Your Worship, I just very briefly want to underline the importance of the 5th clause in this motion, which stresses the need to seek diversity going into the future. I think that everyone should understand that Council takes this very seriously.
Thank you, Councilor Hawkins. Further discussion on the report? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Report 17-30, 2017 Citizen Nominee for the Development Appeals Board. Councilor Stevens.
Thank you, Your Worship. Seek concurrence on the following recommendation: 2017 Citizen Nominee to the Development Appeals Board. Recommendation here is that Gina McGinn be nominated for the appointment to the Development Appeals Board for a term effective April 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2019, or until a successor is appointed.
A seconder, please. Councilor Bryce. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Report 17-31, the White Butte Regional Trans-Canada Trail. Councilor Stevens, you're jumping up and down this evening.
All right. Thank you, Your Worship. The White Butte Regional Planning Committee is seeking the City of Regina's endorsement and support for the White Butte Trans-Canada Trail project. The White Butte Regional Planning Committee is not seeking, to be clear here, funding or financial contribution from the city. The city will remain solely responsible for its own pathways, and current city pathways would eventually link to the regional TCT trails. A couple of key points here worth mentioning. The Regional Planning Committee will establish a separate TCT project team committee and assign a project manager to develop a project plan to deliver construction of the trails and pedestrian crossings. In terms of the funding model here, for each section of the trail built, the community benefiting most from that section will provide primary resources and effort for fundraising the construction of that leg. In terms of TCT funding, the Canadian TCT Association provides funding for 100% of planning and 50% of construction. The applicable community for each section will seek the remaining shortfall. Furthermore, the city will remain solely responsible to plan and administer pathways within its boundary. If we're looking at a timeline here, by spring, the committee hopes to have established its project team, developed a marketing and fundraising strategy, and deliver phase 1 of the project, which is a pedestrian crossing over Highway 1 at the White Butte City Overpass. And finally, at this time, the White Butte Regional Planning Committee is seeking buy-in from its members to pursue this project as a regional initiative and asks for our support to endorse the said initiative. I seek concurrence for this report.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Seconder for the report, please. Councillor Bresciani. Discussions? Councillor O'Donnell?
Thanks. I'm pleased to see this. This is good. Can I ask, on the other side of White Butte, is there any trail, or would this, in my language, be an extension of what city has already? Is there anything to the east that's immediate?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, I'll ask Ms. Bisdell to go through what's happening on the east side.
So I'm referring specifically to east of White Butte.
Ms. Bisdell?
Through your worship, the trail that is proposed within the region, within the White Butte Regional Planning Area, is actually following a grid road up north to the village of Edenwald, and there is a Trans-Canada Trail that will connect, but it is all primarily along the gravel roads.
Okay. And could I ask, then I'll follow up, to the west of the city, what's happening? Is there anything?
Through your worship, the scope of this project does not extend to the west of the city. We were only looking at the White Butte Regional Planning Area for this scope.
And I understand that. I'm just curious, is there any trail to the west? If I got on my bike to the west of the city, is there a trail to go on?
Through your worship.
Outside of our jurisdiction?
Ms. Blaisdell? Outside our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Through your worship, I don't know at this time. I'm not sure if there's anybody that can answer that at this time.
I think there is.
Yeah.
Ms. Harlock, do you have any comments?
Through your worship, we can take that away and get back to council exactly where the trails outside the city limits, where there's portions.
Right, thanks. My point in all of this is I believe the province of Saskatchewan is behind the rest of Canada, and I was just curious more if there's any other plans to unite. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. The proposed route or trail through Regina, is there any of it that's incomplete already, or not incomplete? Any of it that's
Still
not
incomplete?
finished right now? Still incomplete?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, there is a few pieces that aren't finished, and as development takes place within those areas, we'll connect the trails. And then you can see in the one map that there is temporary routes right now.
So will we be applying for any of this funding through these grants?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, if there is funding, yeah, if available, we would apply for those types of grants.
Thank you. I hope we do.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Findura.
Your Worship, just curious on as the trails go in places, where are we in there might be negotiations, where are we with the landowners? Is all the landowners on board? Because you're going to have to talk to somebody, let the trail go through. Am I asking, is it too far, or?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, I might start and ask Ms. Bisdell to go expand further, but there is a general route, and of course there would be needing to have negotiations with different landowners to have that on. As Ms. Bisdell said, a lot of it will be on rights of ways, so that are owned by the municipalities, but I might ask Ms. Bisdell to expand if there's anything further. Through your worship, there is a proposed trail, but it is just proposed, and there hasn't been negotiations or any discussions with landowners for a trail. So where that trail will actually go will be determined through the project team.
Okay, just a comment. So my thoughts are going, who's going to be maintaining that, if it's on a private land and all those different things. So, okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Findura. Other speakers? Councillor Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to comment on the fact that there are some trails that go through Wascana Center Authority Park right now, and they have applied for grants. And so some of that trail is already in place through the park. Yes. And I hope that the changes that are being proposed for Wascana Center Authority won't damage some of the things we've already put into place.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Any other comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Report 32 is the 2017 Canada 150 July 1st celebration. Councillor Stevens.
2017 Canada 150 July 1st celebration. That City Council approve an expenditure of $100,000 from the General Fund Reserve in support of Regina's Canada 150 Canada Day July 1st celebrations. Funding will support free and extended transit and paratransit service, as well as general operations for the celebrations, which will include policing, security, translation services, fireworks, and family entertainment. That City Council delegate authority to the City Manager or his designate to approve and enter into a contribution agreement for federal funding in the amount of $400,000 for the Canada 150 Canada Day celebrations. That the City Clerk be authorized to execute the agreements on behalf of the City after review and approval by the City Solicitor, and that the City Council delegate authority to the City Manager or designate to approve and enter into a contribution agreement with the Regina Canada Day Committee for the City to provide funding to the Committee of up to $50,000 of the funding in Recommendation 1. I seek concurrence on this report.
Thank you for that. A seconder, please. Councillor Murray, a discussion on the report. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question for the administration. Is the city contribution of $100,000 necessary to trigger the $400,000 contribution from the federal government?
The City Manager.
Through you, Your Worship, no, the $400,000 will be provided through the federal government. The $100,000 is the recommendation that we believe as a municipality we need to contribute to really celebrate that special day being Canada's 150th birthday, but the two are not connected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. No other speakers. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Report 33 is a protocol of recognition of a partnership with respect to the City of Regina and File Hills Capel Tribal Council. Councillor Stevens.
That the City Council approve the protocol of recognition, partnership, and respect between the City of Regina and Five Hills Capel Tribal Council, that the Mayor be authorized to sign the agreement on behalf of the City. I seek concurrence on this report.
Seconder, please. Councillor Murray. Discussion on the report? Councillor Stevens, if you could take chair for a moment, I'd appreciate it very much.
Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We've discussed this at great length at Executive Committee. I just want to highlight the fact this, firstly, is to thank the administration for the negotiation of this with RITSIS, which is the operating arm within the City of Regina of File Hills Capel Tribal Council. This is a really important arrangement. I can't stress the importance of this, particularly with respect to reconciliation and speaking and dealing with and talking to and working with our Indigenous peoples within the City of Regina. This has been a very smooth discussion. We do expect to have a prospective date for signing, which we obviously very public, and members of council will be invited to that. When we speak in terms of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission call to action, this is very much meeting the terms of what we are beginning to do through the process of a reconciliation with First Nations people. So I would urge members of council to support this. It's important that we be unanimous to show strong support for our friends and neighbors. Thank you. No other speakers? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll now move on to Finance and Administration Committee reports. Thank you, Councillor Stevens, for doing all those. Executive Committee, this is Councillor Hawkins with respect to elected officials on administrative boards, on superannuation plan, and elected officials pay purchase pension plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the recommendation of the Finance and Administration Committee as follows. 1, that Councillor Sharon Bryce be appointed to the administrative boards of the City of Regina Casual Employees Superannuation Plan and the City of Regina Elected Officials Money Purchase Pension Plan for a term expiring October 31, 2020, and 2, that the member continue to hold her position until such time as her successor is appointed.
A seconder for that, please. Councilor Bresciani. Discussion on the report. No discussion, Councilor Bryce, on that one? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Lease of city property on Arcola Avenue. Councilor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. On behalf of the Finance Administration Committee, I move here their recommendation 1, that the lease of the city-owned property located at 850 Arcola Avenue to Schneider's Millwork and Contractors, Inc., be approved consistent with the terms and conditions stated in the body of this report. 2, that the administration be authorized to finalize any other commercially relevant terms and conditions of the lease documents. 3, that the city clerk be authorized to execute the lease agreement documents as prepared by the city solicitor.
Thank you, Councilor Hawkins. A seconder for that.
Second
report?
that.
Second, Councilor Flagel. Discussion.
Your Worship.
Go right ahead.
I just want to briefly explain this because normally these matters are put out for competition, but in this case not so. And the reason for that is that Schneider's Millwork is on a piece of land that may one day go to the Arcola widening. As a result, as part of the lease, they've agreed to vacate the land when it's needed for the Arcola Street project. Given that, the ability to put it out for a competitive bid would make no sense, and so we're proceeding in this way.
Thank you, Councilor Hawkins. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Public Works and Infrastructure Committee on the Local Improvement Program Review. Councilor Bryce.
Thank you. I move on behalf of Public Works, CR 17-36. Our recommendation is that no local improvement program be developed, as outlined in option 4 of the report, and that recommendation number 2, which was in the report, be withdrawn. We decided that...
Can I just get a seconder for that, please? Councilor Hawkins, go ahead.
At Public Works, we decided that we didn't want a local improvement program at this time. We felt it would be prudent for us to go with the option to not have one. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councilor Bryce. Speakers to the report. We call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have 2 motions, and these are notice of motions, so they're not debatable. They are both from Councilor Andrews, so you can go just proceed to let us know what's in those 2 motions, and then, but no debating. Councilor Stevens.
This is motion 17-5, class trip program. Whereas the City of Saskatoon launched a class trip program in 2016 that offers free transit service to teachers, students, and chaperones traveling on class trips. Whereas the City of Regina's draft transportation master plan focuses on increasing transit ridership. Whereas a class trip program has the potential to educate the public about the value of Regina's public transit system. Therefore, be it resolved that administration prepare a report for council on the development of a class trip program that will waive the fee for service to daycare, primary, and secondary school teachers, students, and chaperones traveling on class trips.
Thank you. And you could read the next one.
Absolutely.
Councilor Stevens.
Motion 17-6. Whereas large Crown corporations like SaskTel, SaskPower, SGI, and Sask Energy are headquartered in Regina. Whereas these and other Crown corporations directly employ over 10,000 people in the province. Whereas over half of all Crown Corporation employees, or approximately 6,600 workers, are employed in Regina. Whereas Crown corporations like SaskTel are important financial contributors to community events and organizations throughout the province. Whereas Crown corporations offer high-quality and affordable telecommunication services and infrastructure, automobile insurance, power, and energy services for public and private sector employers in Regina. Whereas SaskTel alone returned on average $82.99 million in dividends per year to the public treasury between 2001 and 2015. Whereas the Crown corporations returned approximately $102 million in revenue to the City of Regina as grants in lieu of property taxes between 2011 and 2015. And whereas the complete or partial privatization of Crown corporations would jeopardize these benefits for the residents of Regina and the province. Therefore, be it resolved that 1, City Council rejects calls by the provincial government to privatize any portion of Saskatchewan's Crown corporations. Do you want me to repeat it again, sir? 2, that City Council affirms the economic benefit of wholly publicly owned Crown corporations for the City of Regina. 3rd, the outcome of this motion be communicated to the ministers responsible for the respective Crown Corporations by letter from Mayor Michael Fougere on behalf of the City Council.
Thank you for that. There is no debate, but I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconder? Councilor Frontier. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Somewhere out there, a meeting was not. Okay. We're voting against it.